Hello. That might be loud. I can't tell. Oh, my thing's all the way up. How's everybody? Tired? Why are you tired? All right. We did it. I'm here. I'm here. I did the thing. Okay, let me see. Can you guys let me turn the music down? Can you guys hear it? Can you guys hear the music? Can you hear this stuff? We're going to listen to lo-fi Lord of the Ring chill beats to relax and study to. Hello, Lord of the Wings. Vanda, the mountain, first time making a stream. Welcome in. Claytonosaurus Rex, Bueno like Taco Bueno. It's okay. First time on Twitch. Welcome to Twitch, Indiac. Hopefully it works out. Hopefully you enjoy it. Mark Clem, there's a lot of first time chatters in here. Say Cookie, Jeffrey Carmen, Zoo Hizzle. What's up, Zoo Hizzle? You're not a first time chatter. I'm just going through people that I see. Wild Soul. We got Megan, Artemoose, Chamomile, and Contemplation. Good morning. Hey Dole, Mary Dole. I don't think Mary Dole is a later chapter. We haven't reached that chapter yet. Peace, peace, peace. That's a Mind Force. Steel Digital. You want to play some Mind Force for book club? No, Kurt. Are these the lo-fi beats? Yeah, I just typed in on Spotify. I typed in Lord of the Rings lo-fi and just played the first one that came up. Are you in mobile? No, I'm not in mobile. Alabama? No. Downloaded Twitch for the book club? Well, thanks for coming in. Emmer Clem, first time watching, third time reading Fellowship of the Ring in the past year. Counting Andy's audiobook, fair. I've heard it's good. Missed the prologue stream last week. You didn't miss too much, but excited to jump into chapters 1 to 3. Only read 1.5 chapters because adulting and graduation's fam. It's all right. You've read it before. We just got a few things to talk about today for chapters 1 to 3. And this is my first time doing anything like a book club type thing. So forgive me, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to change my for those of you who have never been here before, I'm a very professional streamer and I'm good at what I do. I'm going to put it so that the chat overlay is on the screen. I don't know why it's not right now. You know what? If I go to this one, I can make my face bigger on this one and it should be the same. Right? Does that work? Is that fine? Is that good enough? Is that good enough for y'all? That way people can see the chat that are watching. I'll change the font to I'll try to change the font. I should have done this before. Okay, save that. Can't really see the chat. Yeah, I'm going to make it bigger. I'm slacking. Yeah, you all know who I am. Y'all know how I am. Bigger font. Make the font bigger. Save. We're going to move it right there. Save. Okay, somebody type something. All right. I think that'll work, right? Maybe. This is a really good layout I have here. All right, yeah, we can kind of see the chat going. All right, there we go. Testing. Works. All right, how's everybody doing today? Are you wearing a metal shirt? What band? No, it's not a metal shirt. This is a Cloakroom shirt. It's Cloakroom. Cloakroom is a thing. Oh no, Trent's here. Trent is here. Here he comes. He's gonna derail this whole thing. He is going to derail this whole thing. Okay, let me make sure this is off. It's off, okay. So I'm just gonna, how's everybody's day going? I, today, took a shower. I stood outside on my front porch. I was working on my tan. In the mornings, I like to walk around without my shirt on and get tan. So all the people driving by are like, why is this dude just standing out here? Don't worry about it. I'm going to get this web thing. Yo, thanks for the sub. Thanks for the sub, Cloakroom Slaps. Also, what's up, Nunjum? Also, if and when ad breaks happen, Cloakroom is a band. Cloakroom is a band. They're a good band. If and when ad breaks happen and we're in the middle of a conversation, just type in the chat that there's an ad break happening, and we'll try to make sure that nobody misses anything cool. Timelines. We're gonna go to the 4th age. I'm gonna get my map ready. All right, that's ready. Okay. So let's see. And again, I appreciate the sub, Nyruluna. If you link your Amazon account to your Twitch, you'll get a free sub too. Just saying. All right. So how long do I want to give some people time to get in? Can you even tan as a ginger? No, I can. I'm able to. I've done it before. Just wait till the end of summer. I'm gonna be bronzed up. Hefe to 89, thanks for the prime. Sir Kempton with the prime, thank you. Rust Girl, you read the intro and it was long. You have to keep up. All right, that's fair. You lost your 37 Dwarf Hunter on hardcore. I'm sorry, dude. I lost my 28 Shaman 2 nights ago. Ava Mile, thanks for coming in. Well, okay, there's a lot of primes coming in. Nuntunjum, thank you. Took Trent 7 hours to read 2.5 chapters. You know, everybody reads at their own pace, Trent. All right. So, just to kick off the book club, I want to read the first passage. I'm going to read the first passage to the book for chapter 1, if that works for you. How do you link your Prime? I don't remember. I did it so many years ago. There's a way to do it, but it's okay. You don't need to worry about it. Lord of the Wings, it's fine. Yes, we are going to do the Silmarillion. And the reason, Nyrulna, hope I'm saying that good, is the reason we're doing Lord of the Rings first is because, and you'll see today, I have a little card here of some notes. And the reason I want to do Lord of the Rings first is because when you're reading through this book, it gives you a good foundation for the Silmarillion, and you don't even realize it while you're reading. And so there's like points that it references things that happen in the Silmarillion or characters in the Silmarillion. And I think when you have a reference point to the story you already know, it makes working through this book, the Silmarillion, a lot easier. And that's my theory. At least it is for me. If you kind of start, because I know there's a lot of people that have only seen the movies, they haven't read the book. And if you've only seen the movie, the Silmarillion might be a little bit too intense. Should one read The Hobbit before Lord of the Rings? That's a question I discussed on here earlier. And in my opinion, no. Because all you really need to know about The Hobbit you get in the prologue and the first chapter in Fellowship of the Ring. Bilbo found the ring. We're going to talk about some things that happened in The Hobbit today. And you just need to know Bilbo found the ring. And Smeagol. Like, you just need to know about that. Will we do Hurin? Oh, yeah, we're going to do Hurin. We're going to do Turin. Turin might come up today. I might have a little note on Turin today. See, somehow we're going to link all of this into the Silmarillion. That's the point. Okay, so I just want to read the first chapter, or the first paragraph, really, of this, because I have some notes on it. In the week before their departure to Arrakis, when all the final scurrying about had reached a nearly unbearable frenzy, an old crone came to visit the mother of the boy Paul. It was a warm night at Castle Caladan, and the ancient pile of stone that had served the Atreides family as home for 26 generations bore that cool sweat, feeling it acquired before a change in the weather. We're doing Dune, right? We're doing Dune, right? I'm pleased. I'm very pleased with myself. Okay. All right. No, for real though. How do we start this? How do we start a, how do you start a, how do normal book clubs start? I've honestly never been in a book club before. Okay, keep going. Keep it just turns into me reading Dune. Yo, Lord of the Wings with the Prime. You figured out how to link it. Thank you. I appreciate it. We should do Dune. Maybe after the Silmarillion, we could take a quick break from Tolkien and do a quick Dune read. Sure, but we got a ways to go with some of the. You start by saying, so what did we think of the book? Okay, what did we think of the book? Yeah, quick Dune read. I inherited all the Dune books from my big brother. All right, Yoshi, that's awesome. I love that for you. I've only read the first one. I don't want to get I don't want to get too I don't want to get too bogged down on Dune talk before we even start. After the book club, we can talk about Dune for a little bit. Yeah, Trent, what do you think about the book, Trenton underscore TV? Okay, Dune. They're no, they're sassy. All right, we're not talking about Dune anymore. No more Dune. You talk about Dune, you get timed out. I'm gonna time Trent out just for fun. All right, so we all read the first three chapters, right? Maybe, maybe they are good builders. That's true. Bilbo's sassy, snarky, full of quips. So is Frodo too. Don't forget about Frodo. Yeah, no, Pippin is a lot more competent in the books. He's still a little bit of a doofus though, but I do enjoy it. One thing that sucks is for the first chapter, I usually like write notes in my books, and so I left my normal book at work that has all my good notes in it. So I'm not sure. What's up, Mexi? Tap me in when we start talking about Fatty Bulger, Fredigar, the goat, the greatest. Yeah, there's a lot of frightened butter, frightened butter. There is a lot more Hobbit lore in the books. There's a lot more everything in the books. Got to go drive a forklift now. Bye. See you, Chop Magic. Drive safe. Keep the forks low when you don't have a load. Keep your CG low. We've all been through the OSHA training. I'm gonna move my head down, my mug down. Recently, your Bo and I did a reading of this on Twitch. Wait, of the Fellowship of the Ring. Can I read? Can I read from the book, or am I gonna get in trouble? Because I'll read a bunch. I will read the first passage. I think it's a good one. Ready? When Mr. Bilbo Baggins of Bag End announced that he would shortly be celebrating his 111st birthday with a party of special magnificence, there was much talk and excitement in Hobbiton. Bilbo was very rich and very peculiar and had been a wonder of the Shire for 60 years, ever since his remarkable disappearance and unexpected return. The riches he'd brought back from his travels had now become a local legend, and it was popularly believed that whatever the folk might say, that the hill at Bag End was full of tunnels and stuffed with treasure. And if that was not enough for fame, there was also his prolonged vigor to marvel at. Time wore on, but it seemed to have little effect on Mr. Baggins. At 90, he was much the same at 50, and at 99 they began to call him well preserved, but unchanged would have been nearer the mark. There were some that shook their heads and thought this was too much of a good thing, and it seemed unfair that anyone should possess apparently perpetual youth as well as reputedly inexhaustible wealth. It will have to be paid for, they said. It isn't natural, and trouble will come from it. It'll have to be paid for, yeah, by Frodo. Frodo's going to pay for it. Yeah, I'm not going to do a full read. I'm not going to do. I mean, I'll do some little things. I mean, whatever. If I get striked, I get striked. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it. Yo, thanks, Pradham, for the sub. I appreciate you. I appreciate that. And the translation's very good. What language are you reading them in? Yeah, so like at the beginning of the book, we see the party that we all know and well. Remained on visiting terms with his relatives, except of course the Sackville Bagginses. Those Sackville Bagginses. Thanks, Butler. You're the man. Oh yeah, Bilbo at the Council of Elrond is great. I think they're fair use loads for criticism, like book club. Yeah, I think it's reasonable. Most of what I want to talk about today, honestly, comes after Long Expected Party. I like the Long Expected Party. It's good, I wish I had my book with the notes in it, but I do on the next 2 chapters. Boo to the Sackville Bagginses. OG, the Sackville Bagginses. The Sackvilles are the OG HOA villains. You're so true. So true, Alaska. Is the video freezing? Is my bitrate messed up? Let me see. Let me make sure my bitrate's good. Okay, yeah, it didn't change. Dwarves are at the party too. Yeah, that is a big change from the movies. You see dwarves at the party, and also Bilbo leaves with the dwarves. Which I like anytime dwarves show up, really. How old is Frodo in Lord of the Rings? Hackett. At the time of this party, at the long expected party, Frodo is turning 33. He turns 33 on September 22nd, which is when Bilbo's turning 111. At the time, we'll get there, when he leaves the Shire, it's 17 years later, and he's 50 when he leaves. I do enjoy an old ham Gamgee, commonly known as the Gaffer. That's Samwise's dad, and I might mess some stuff up in this. Just saying. The Gaffer's great. We love the Gaffer. He's the first person in the book to really tell a Ringwraith off. You know what I mean? He tells one of the Nazguls off. Frodo leaves 17. Yeah, it's 17 years after the party that Frodo leaves. 17 years after the party, Frodo leaves. I love how, and I love in the book how gossipy, how little, like the hobbits love gossip. They love rumors. They love gossip. They love all of that stuff. They're always getting in everybody's business, which I think is hilarious. Like right here, they're talking. Obviously, they love the drama. They love the tea. They love the tea. Frodo doesn't offer Lobelia any tea, but they love the tea. We'll get to that though. But I do love this part where they're talking about Frodo's parents. You're right, Dad, said the Gaffer. Not that the Brandybucks of Buckland live in the old forest, but they're a queer breed, seemingly. They fool around with boats on that big river, and that isn't natural. I'm talking about hobbits and boats, and they said, go back, Sam, on the song. Small wonder that trouble came of it, I say. But be that as it may, Mr. Frodo is as nice as a young hobbit as you could wish to meet. Very much like Mr. Bilbo, and in more than looks. After all, his father was a Baggins. A decent and respectable hobbit was Mr. Drogo Baggins, and there was never much to tell of him until he was drowned. Until he was drowned. I love that they use the word drowned. Drowned, said several voices. They'd heard this and other darker rumors before, of course, but hobbits have a passion for family history, and they were ready to hear it again. Well, so they say, said the Gaffer. You see, Mr. Drogo, he married poor Miss Primula Brandybuck, and she was our Mr. Bilbo's first cousin on the mother's side, her mother being the youngest of the old Took's daughters. And Mr. Drogo was his second cousin. So Mr. Frodo is his first and second cousin, once removed either way, as the saying is, and if you follow me. And Mr. Drogo was staying at Brandy Hall with his father-in-law, old Master Gorbodoc, as he often did after his marriage, him being partial to his victuals, and old Gorbodoc keeping a mighty generous table. And he went out boating on the Brandywine River, and he and his wife were drowned, and poor Mr. Frodo, only a child and all. And I love this part when they say, I've heard he went out on the water after dinner in the moonlight, said Old Noakes, and it was Drogo's weight that sunk the boat. And I heard she pushed him in and he pulled her in after him, said Sandyman, the Hobbit Miller. And here's the thing. We don't like Ted Sandyman. Ted Sandyman sucks. Yeah, drowned from Lee Spaghetti. Drowned. Drowned. Sandyman sucks. And now in the back of the book, well, not in my copy that I have right here, but in the back of the book, you'll see all of the family trees and like once cousins and second cousins and twice. It all confuses me. I don't know how any of that stuff works. And then you see Bilbo adopting Frodo as his heir, his nephew as his heir, and he decides to gift him Bag End. And obviously that came as a nasty shock for those Sackville Bagginses. They thought they were going to get Bag End that time when he went off and was thought to be dead. And then he comes back and orders them off, and he goes on living and never looking a day old, Lord bless him. And suddenly he produces an heir, has all the papers made out proper, and the Sackville Bagginses won't ever see the inside of Bag End now. And there's a tidy bit of money tucked away up there, I hear tell, said a stranger, a visitor on business from Mitchell Delving in the West Farthing. All at the top of your hill is full of tunnels packed with chests of gold and silver and jewels, by what I've heard. Your town lost power. What I missed? Not much. I like how it takes 3 chapters to leave the driveway. The party's over. The mail's sorted. We've discussed every cousin twice removed, and we're ready to go. That's how it is. That's how it is. I personally love the slow start to the book. Personally, I think it's great. I think it really sets up the life that the hobbits are living, and it kind of shows the sacrifice that they make throughout the story, you know, like where they're coming from. But they're a hardy folk. Yeah, they do see the inside. Yeah, that's true. And they end up living there. And before I go further, how many people in here are reading along and it's their first time reading the books and they've only seen the movies? Is there anybody in here who's never read the books before? What? Wait, what? Haven't read the books yet? Just got your book? Yeah, I saw you got it the other night, Elmira. Still reading the first book. Oh, what's up, Joe Bruin? It's all good. Only your second time. Okay, only seen the movies. I don't want to spoil the ending, but Lobelia sucks. Lobelia and Otho, we're not fans, but they'll circle back later. I just don't want to. I don't want to ruin it. Yeah, listening to him counts, I think. Your husband's named after Sam. That's awesome. All right, we're gonna skip forward here. We're gonna kind of cruise through Long Expected Party, honestly, because it's a lovely chapter and it's nice and I like it. There's a few things in here, but for the most part, the next 2 chapters are where it actually starts getting pretty exciting. Like, yeah, Council of Elrond, that's going to be a 1 chapter week, and it's going to be a 12-hour stream. I mean, trust me, in Three's Company, I've got things to say about Three's Company. They employ all the local talent for the party, and dwarves. Don't forget the dwarves. That very month was September, and as fine as you could ask. A day or 2 later, a rumor, probably started by the knowledgeable Sam, was spread about that there were going to be fireworks. Fireworks, what is more, such as not been seen in the Shire for nigh on a century, not indeed since the old Took died. Seems weird to have fireworks at a funeral, but all right. Days passed, and the day drew nearer, and an odd-looking wagon laden with odd-looking packages rolled into Hobbiton one evening and toiled up the hill to Bag End. The startled hobbits peered out of the lamplit doors to gape at it. It was driven by an outlandish folk singing strange songs. Dwarves, with long beards and deep hoods, and a few of them remained at Bag End. And at the end of the second week in September, a cart came through the Bywater from the direction of the Brandywine Bridge in broad daylight. An old man was driving it all alone, and he wore a tall, pointed blue hat and a long gray cloak and a silver scarf. He had a long white beard and bushy eyebrows that stuck out beyond the brim of his hat. Small hobbit children ran after the cart all through Hobbiton and right up the hill, and it had a cargo of fireworks, as they rightly guessed. At Bilbo's front door, the old man began to unload. There were great bundles of fireworks of all sorts and shapes, each labeled with a large red G and the elf rune shape. That was Gandalf's mark, of course, and the old man was Gandalf the wizard, whose fame in the Shire was due mainly to his skill with fires, smokes, and lights. His real business was far more difficult and dangerous, but the Shire folk knew nothing about it. To them, he was just one of the attractions at the party. Hence the excitement of the Hobbit children. G for grand, they shouted, and the old man smiled. I love Gandalf so much. Is Gandalf. He shows up. I don't know Elvish. Me? I don't know Elvish. Is Gandalf best character? Faramir's best character. I think Gandalf's a little bit more snarky in the books for sure. So invitations began pouring out, and Hobbiton post office was blocked, and the Bywater post office was snowed under, and the voluntary assistant postmen were called for, and there was a constant stream of them going up the hill, carrying hundreds of polite variations on "Thank you, I shall certainly come." A notice appeared on the gate at Bag End: no admittance except on party business. Even those who had or pretended to have party business were seldom allowed inside. Bilbo was busy writing invitations, ticking off answers, packing up presents, and making some private preparations of his own. From the time of Gandalf's arrival, he remained hidden from view. And I don't know if it said this in this chapter or not, but obviously we know on their birthdays, hobbits give out gifts. They don't receive gifts. What's up, Postcourt? I hope we'll talk about the skewering of Faramir's character. But I think we will, Betamo, we will. We will. Let's see. Weather clouded over. That was on Wednesday, the eve of the party, and anxiety was intense. And Thursday, September the 22nd, actually dawned, and the sun got up, the clouds vanished, flags were unfurled, and the fun began. Bilbo Baggins called it a party, but it was really a variety of entertainments rolled into one. Practically everybody living near was invited. A very few were overlooked by accident, but as they turned up all the same. That did not matter. So he basically has everybody in the Shire invited to his party. Everybody's coming. I do like the mention of the great tree that the pavilion is being built around. We'll think about that tree later in the book. You'll see why. Let's see. So here we have the fireworks described, which I enjoy. You're gonna cry? I can change it. You want me to change it? No, we're gonna keep it on. We're gonna talk about the fireworks. If there are Hobbit birthdays almost every day to regularly receive gifts, does that mean there are like 300 hobbits in Hobbiton? Maybe some of them could share birthdays, but I guess if we're thinking about it, Megan, yeah, maybe there's only 300. I don't know. I'm lamenting. Yeah, quick pause the discussion. That is a lot of hobbits. I mean, 300 hobbits? Would you rather fight one gorilla or 300 hobbits? I don't know. Who would win? I love that they invited people just to make sure they get to a funny number. Well, that's just the people invited to the pavilion. I was about to read that. I was about to read that. Same as Legolas is not the same kind of elf as Elrond. Yes, and I actually have a note on the elves later. And I'm not an expert on the Silmarillion by any stretch, but we're going to learn together. That's the plan. Somebody in here probably knows more than I do. There's other hobbits in other villages too. Yes, yeah. There's the West Farthing, the South Farthing, the East Farthing. There's Mitchell Delving, the Brandybucks. Like the Shire is pretty big. It's divided into 4 different farthings, and there's quite a lot of different towns within the Shire. I think there's a map at the back of the book. I don't know if it has a map in this version. My good version's at home, which really sucks. Yeah, this one doesn't have the good map in it. Plus Bree hobbits. Yeah, don't forget the Bree hobbits. We haven't got to the Archit and Bree and stuff hobbits yet. We'll get there. But yeah, there's lots of hobbits out there. Dr. Jekyll. Anyways, let's read about Gandalf's fireworks. Aren't you at your home? I am at my home. Why? What? Oh, I left my book at work. My good book, the one that I normally read, is in my toolbox at work. I left it there. Is there a map of the Shire at the beginning? I was going to read some of the towns. Where? I'm not seeing it. Whatever. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of different towns there. Here's Gandalf's fireworks I like. I've got a lot of different copies. There were rockets like a flight of scintillating. I don't know if that's the right word. Is that how you say that word? I don't know. There were rockets like a flight of scintillating birds singing with sweet voices. There were green trees with trunks of dark smoke, and their leaves opened like a whole spring unfolding in a moment, and their shining branches dropped glowing flowers down upon the astonished hobbits, disappearing with a sweet scent just before they touched their upturned faces. I enjoy that Gandalf's fireworks have scent attached to them. Scintillating? Is that how you say it then? There were fountains of butterflies that flew glittering into the trees, and there were pillars of colored fires that rose and turned into eagles, sailing ships or a phalanx of flying swans. There was a red thunderstorm and a shower of yellow rain, and there was a forest of silver spears that sprang suddenly into the air with a yell like an embattled army, and came down again into the water with a hiss like 100 hot snakes. There was also one last surprise, and in honor of Bilbo, it startled the hobbits exceedingly as Gandalf intended. The lights went out, a great smoke went up, and it shaped itself like a mountain seen in the distance and began to glow at the summit. It sprouted green and scarlet flames, and out flew a red golden dragon, not life-size, but terribly lifelike. Fire came from his jaws, and his eyes glared down, and there was a roar, and he whizzed 3 times over the head of the crowd. They all ducked, and many fell flat on their faces. The dragon passed like an express train, turned a somersault, and burst over Bywater with a deafening explosion. Oh, yo, thanks for the sub, Super Fast Moose. There's a lot of mooses in the chat. Gandalf's fireworks are not trauma informed. Yeah, I do find it interesting that Merry and Pippin don't light the dragon firework in the book, but I do enjoy them lighting the firework in the movie. I think it shows like the mischievous nature of some of the hobbits. You know, I think that was a good change. I like that in the movies. It's a great scene. It sets up their characters really well, I think. Ads? Okay. Ads. Ad break. Gloomweaver. You made it. While we're on an ad break, Gloomweaver, when I got to Three's Company and I was talking to, I wasn't talking. I was talking to myself, I guess, but thinking about Finrod, Gildor Inglorian of the House of Finrod, that's going to put me on like an hour-long tangent. I'm just letting you know. It's gonna put me on an hour long. We're just reading the word Finrod. I'm like, oh, Finrod felt like good. Yo, thanks for the prime. Not a Doc Martin. Why can't I talk about Finrod? I'm gonna talk about Finrod. It's gonna happen. I'm letting you know. We're foreshadowing. There's some people in the chat that don't know about Finrod. I'm so sad about him. Yeah, well, he went out like a champ. Anyways, we're gonna get to Finrod. We're gonna get to Finrod. The movie has way less time to set up the Hobbit characters, so the shortcut is lighting the fires. Yeah, no, I agree, Earl Grey. I think it's a good change. I think it does a really good job of setting up the characters and everything like that. When I talk about the differences between the books and the movies, it's not me being upset at some of the changes. Some of the changes I think are not good changes, but overall, whatever. They're great movies. They're 10 out of 10 movies. It's never me digging on the movies. We're back now? All right. So we were talking about fireworks. We're talking about the fireworks, the change, how Merry and Pippin, we were talking about how Merry and Pippin don't light the dragon firework in the book, but how in the movie, I think it's a nice change because it gives the, it sets up their characters really well for the movie adaptation. Yo, thanks for the sub. Dances in Starlight. We're going to talk about Finrod in a little bit, yeah. I have a 7-hour drive home tomorrow. Can't wait to listen to this while driving. Yeah, it's going to be great. That's a good, perfect thing to listen to when you're driving. I can't listen to audiobooks, but I can when I'm driving. Sorry. I don't know if this is a good book club. I got ADD. I got ADD brain. I'm going to be jumping all over the place. I have no idea what I'm doing, by the way. Let's see. Okay, so we're getting to the call for supper, where Bilbo makes his speech. And I think this is a funny part. That is the signal for supper, said Bilbo, and the pain and alarm vanished at once, and the prostrate hobbits leaped to their feet, and there was splendid supper for everyone, that is, except those invited to the special family dinner party. This was held in the great pavilion with the tree. The invitations were limited to 12 dozen, a number also called by the hobbits 1 gross, though the word was not considered proper to use of people, and the guests were selected from all the families to which Bilbo and Frodo were related, with the addition of a few special unrelated friends, such as Gandalf. Many young hobbits were included and present by parental permission, for hobbits were easygoing with their children in the manner of sitting up late, especially when there's a chance of getting a free meal. Bringing up young hobbits took a lot of provender. You're naming your son Thorin? That's awesome. Yeah, I love that line. There were Baggins, Boffins, Tooks, Brandybucks, Grubs, Chubbs, selection of Burrows' Bulgers, Brace Girdles, Brockhouses, Good Bodies, Horn Blowers, and Proud Foots. Proud Feet. I can't read Proudfoot without correcting the Proud Feet every time. Yeah, y'all know. Y'all know. Okay, so they all expected a pleasant feast or whatever, but we're gonna read Bilbo's speech because I love it. Don't forget the Bulgers. Don't forget the Boffins. I love Hobbit names. They're so fun. Let's see. After the feast, more or less, came the speech. Most of the company were, however, now in a tolerant mood at that delightful stage which they called filling up the corners. They were sipping their favorite drinks and nibbling at their favorite dainties, and their fears were forgotten, and they were prepared to listen to anything and to cheer at every full stop. And I love how before this, like the hobbits all know that Bilbo has a tendency to drone on. You know, he's a real droner. He's a yapper. Got the gift of gab. Because we'll see that later. Before or after the Council of Elrond, where Bilbo just recites stuff for like 3 pages. You finally finished the first chapter? Hell yeah. He's infamous for boring speeches, truly. Anyways, this one's fun. My dear people, began Bilbo, rising in his place. Hear, 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 they shouted, and kept on repeating it in chorus, seeming reluctant to follow their own advice, and Bilbo left his place and went and stood on the chair under the illuminated tree.
The light of the lanterns fell on his beaming face, and the golden button shone on his embroidered silk waistcoat. They could all see him standing, waving one hand in the air. The other was in his trouser pocket. "My dear Bagginses and Boffins," he began again, "and my dear Tooks and Brandybucks and Grubbs and Chubbs and Burrowses and Hornblowers and Bolgers, Brace Girdles, Good Bodies, Brockhouses and Proudfoots." "Proud feet," shouted an elderly hobbit from the back of the pavilion. His name, of course, was Proudfoot, and well merited. His feet were large, exceptionally furry, and both were on the table. "Proudfoots," repeated Bilbo. "Also my good Sackville Bagginses that I welcome back at last to Bag End." Just throwing a little shade at him. "Today is my 111th birthday, and I am 11 today." "Hooray, many happy returns," they shouted, and hammered joyously on the tables. Bilbo was doing splendidly. This was the sort of stuff they liked, short and obvious. "I hope you are all enjoying yourselves as much as I am." Deafening cheers, cries of yes and no. I wonder who's saying no. Probably the Sackville. I bet the Sackville Bagginses are the ones saying no. Noises of trumpets and horns, pipes and flutes and other musical instruments. There were, as has been said, many young hobbits present. Hundreds of musical crackers had been pulled. Most of them bore the mark Dale on them, which did not convey much to most of the hobbits, but they all agreed they were marvelous crackers. They contained instruments, small, but of perfect make and enchanting tones. Indeed, in one corner, some of the young Tooks and Brandybucks, supposing Uncle Bilbo to have finished, since he had plainly said all that was necessary, now got up for an impromptu orchestra and began a merry dance tune. Master Everard Took and Miss Melilot Brandybuck got on a table with bells in their hands, began to dance the Springle Ring, a pretty dance, but rather vigorous. Hobbits are rowdy. Hobbits are rowdy. Is there any significance to the number 111? I don't think so, T. Souther. I don't think there is. Do you think there are things set up in the first few chapters that read differently once you have the full context of Tolkien's work? Yes, definitely. It's not as much this chapter, but the next ones for sure. And we're gonna get into it for sure. Is it an angel number? I guess yeah. It's 100. It's 11. Elrond Council. Oh yeah, the Council of Elrond. Yeah, huge. Anyways, we're going to continue. But Bilbo had not finished. Seizing a horn from a youngster nearby, he blew 3 loud hoots, and the noises subsided. "I shall not keep you long," he cried. Cheers from all the assembly. "I have called you all together for a purpose." Something in the way he said that made an impression. There was almost silence, and 1 or 2 of the Tooks pricked up their ears. "Indeed, for 3 purposes. First of all, to tell you that I am immensely fond of you all, and that 11 years is too short a time to live among such excellent and admirable hobbits." Tremendous outburst of approval. "I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve." I'll be honest, I've been reading that line and hearing that line since like 2001, and I have no idea what it means. I'm like the hobbits in the movie. I'm just sitting there like, what? I feel like I work it out in my head sometimes, and then I can't. The next line, I feel so seen. I feel so seen. This was an unexpected and rather difficult. There was some scattered clapping, but most of them were trying to work out and see if it came to a compliment. Yeah, that's me. That's me. Yeah, I just move on. I'm like, I can't figure this out. It's a good line. Yeah, it's a great line. He liked half of them more than they deserve. Maybe. I don't know. Over my head. Secondly, to celebrate my birthday. Cheers again. I should say our birthday, for it is of course also the birthday of my heir and nephew, Frodo. He comes of age and into his inheritance today. Some perfunctory clapping by the elders, and some loud shouts of "Frodo, Frodo, jolly old Frodo" from the juniors. The Sackville Bagginses scowled and wondered what he meant by coming into his inheritance. Together we score 144. Your numbers were chosen to fit this remarkable total. 1 gross, if I may use the expression. No cheers. This was ridiculous. Many of his guests, and especially the Sackville Bagginses, were insulted, feeling sure they had only been asked to fill up the required number like goods in a package. 1 gross indeed. Vulgar expression. Yeah, Frodo and Bilbo Hackett, they share a birthday. September 22nd. I'm 33 years old too. Just saying. And since I'm 33, I think the next, after we get past this chapter, we're gonna work on the next chapter, and then I will do the rest of the book 17 years later, when I'm 50. It is also, if I may be allowed to refer to ancient history, the anniversary of my arrival by barrel at Escaroth on the Long Lake. Though that fact, it was my birthday, slipped my memory on that occasion. I was only 51 then, and my birthdays did not seem so important. The banquet was very splendid. However, though I had a bad cold at the time, I remember and could only say, "Thank you very much." I now repeat it more correctly. Thank you very much for coming to my little party. Obstinate silence. They all feared that a song or some poetry was now imminent, and they were getting bored. Why couldn't he stop talking and let them drink his health? But Bilbo did not sing or recite. He paused for a moment. Thirdly and finally, he said, "I wish to make an announcement." And he spoke this last word so loudly and suddenly that everyone sat up who still could. I regret to announce that, though, as I said, 11 years is far too short a time to spend among you, this is the end. I am going. I am leaving now. Goodbye. He stepped down and vanished, and there was a blinding flash of light, and all the guests blinked. When they opened their eyes, Bilbo was nowhere to be seen. 144 flabbergasted hobbits sat back speechless. Old Odo Proudfoot removed his feet from the table and stamped. Then there was a dead silence until suddenly, after several deep breaths, every Baggins, Boffin, Took, Brandybuck, Grubb, Chubb, Burrows, Bolger, Bracegirdle, Brockhouse, Goodbody, Hornblower, and Proudfoot began to talk at once. It was generally agreed that the joke was in very bad taste, and even more food and drink were needed to cure the guests of shock and annoyance. So, yeah, I was going to say, Nyrulna, I agree. I love that Gandalf comes in with the assist, and obviously later we'll see that Gandalf and Frodo both knew that this was going to happen, which is a slight difference, but I like that Gandalf had the foresight to know not to just let him disappear like that and to add the flash, because Gandalf is obviously at this point suspicious of the ring. Quite suspicious of it, I would think. Anyways, yeah, Frodo gets sad, sets in silence. They send more wine, more food, hobbits eating. Hobbits and eating. Name a more iconic duo. You can't. Yeah, we saw what happened in Bree without the Flash. It's true. It's true. The Sackville Bagginses had already departed in wrath. Anyways, let's skip forward a little bit here to Gandalf showing up at Bag End. "Hello," said Bilbo. "I wondered if you'd turn up." "I'm glad to find you visible," replied the wizard, sitting down in a chair, "and I wanted to catch you and have a few final words. I suppose you feel that everything has gone off splendidly and according to plan?" "Yes, I do," said Bilbo, "though that flash was surprising. It quite startled me, let alone the others. A little addition of your own, I suppose." "It was. You've wisely kept that ring secret all these years, and it seemed to me necessary to give your guests something else that would seem to explain your sudden vanishment, and would spoil my joke. You're always interfering. You are an interfering old busybody," laughed Bilbo, "but I expect you know best, as usual." Gandalf does know best, it's true, because he says, "I do, when I know anything. But I don't feel too sure about this whole affair. It has now come to the final point, and you've had your joke and alarmed or offended most of your relations and given the whole Shire something to talk about for 9 days, or 99 more likely. Are you going any further?" "Yes, I am. I feel I need a holiday, a very long holiday, as I've told you before, probably a permanent holiday. I don't expect I shall return, and in fact I don't mean to, and have made all the arrangements. I'm old, Gandalf. I don't look it, but I'm beginning to feel it in my heart of hearts. Well preserved indeed," he snorted. "Why, I feel all thin, sort of stretched, if you know what I mean, like butter that's been scraped over too much bread. It can't be right. I need a change or something." Gandalf looked curiously and closely at him. "No, it does not seem right," he said thoughtfully. "No, after I believe your plan is probably the best." Well, I've made up my mind anyways. I want to see mountains again, Gandalf. Mountains. And then find somewhere where I can rest in peace and quiet without a lot of relatives prying around and a string of confounded visitors hanging on the bell. I might find somewhere where I can finish my book. I've thought of a nice ending for it. And he lived happily ever after to the end of his days. And they talk about Frodo wanting to leave with him and all that. This part is pretty much in line with what we've seen in the movies as well. It is iconic, yeah. Butter scraped over too much bread. Yeah, same. Anyways, here's Bilbo and Gandalf talking about not wanting to get rid of the ring. I'm leaving everything to him, of course, except a few oddments. I hope he'll be happy when he gets used to being on his own. It's time he was his own master now. Everything, said Gandalf, the ring as well? You agreed to that, you remember. Well, yes, I suppose so, stammered Bilbo. Where is it? In an envelope, if you must know, said Bilbo impatiently. There on the mantelpiece. Well, no. Here it is in my pocket, he hesitated. Isn't that odd now? He said softly to himself. Yet after all, why not? Why shouldn't it stay there? Gandalf looked again very hard at Bilbo, and there was a gleam in his eyes. I think, Bilbo, he said quietly, should leave it behind. Don't you want to? Well, yes. And no. Now that it comes to it, I don't like parting with it at all, I may say, and I don't really see why I should. Why do you want me to? He asked, and a curious change came over his voice, and it was sharp with suspicion and annoyance. You're always badgering about my ring, but you've never bothered me about the other things that I got on my journey. No, but I had to badger you, said Gandalf. I wanted the truth, and it was important. Magic rings are, well, magical, and they are rare and curious, and I should like to know where it is if you go wandering again. Also, I think you have had it quite long enough, and you won't need it any more, Bilbo, unless I am quite mistaken. Bilbo flushed, and there was an angry light in his eyes. His kindly face grew hard. Why not? He cried. And what business is it of yours, anyways, to know what I do with my own things? It is my own. I found it, and it came to me. Yes, said Gandalf, but there's no need to get angry. If I am, it is your fault, said Bilbo. It is mine, I tell you, mine. My own, my precious. Yes, my precious. And the wizard's face remained grave and attentive, and only a flicker in his deep eyes showed that he was startled and indeed alarmed. It has been called that before, he said, but not by you. But I say it now, and why not? Even Gollum said the same once. It is not his now, but mine, and I shall keep it, I say. Gandalf stood up, and he spoke sternly. You'll be a fool if you do, Bilbo, he said. You make that clear with every word that you say. It has gone too far. It has got too far much hold on you. Let it go, and then you can yourself be free. I'll do as I choose, and I'll go as I please, said Bilbo obstinately. But now, my dear hobbit, said Gandalf, all your long life we've been friends, and you owe me something. Come, do as you promised, and give it up. Well, if you want my ring yourself, say so, cried Bilbo, but you won't get it. I won't give my precious away, I tell you, and his hand strayed to the hilt of his small sword. Bilbo was ready to throw hands. Gandalf's eyes flashed. It will be my turn to get angry soon, he said. If you say that again, I shall, and then you will see Gandalf the Grey uncloaked. He took a step towards the hobbit, and he seemed to grow tall and menacing, and his shadow filled the room. Bilbo backed away to the wall, breathing hard, his hand clutching at his pocket, and they stood for a while facing one another, and the air of the room tingled. Gandalf's eyes remained bent on the hobbit. Slowly his hands relaxed, and he began to tremble. Anyways. Do not take me for some conjurer of cheap tricks. Yeah, no, I'm with you, Will. Yeah, the tension in the book fits. I love that, it shows Gandalf or Bilbo, like, how the ring has a hold on him, Probably the first time he called it his precious. He's refusing to leave with it. And it's a really important note. It's a really important note that Bilbo voluntarily leaves the ring. Like, Gandalf kind of had to scare him a little bit. He had to scare him a little bit, but it's a very important note that Bilbo voluntarily leaves it. I like this part as well. After the shadow passes and Bilbo agrees to it, Bilbo drew his hand over his eyes. I'm sorry, he said, but I felt so queer, and yet it would be a relief in some way not to be bothered with it anymore. It has been so growing on my mind lately. Sometimes I felt like it was an eye looking at me. An eye? An eye looking at me? It's the first mention of the eye. And I'm always wanting to put it on and disappear, don't you know, or wondering if it's safe and pulling it out to make sure. I tried locking it up, and I found I couldn't rest without it in my pocket. I don't know why, and I don't seem to be able to make up my mind. Then trust mine, said Gandalf. It is quite made up. Go away and leave it behind. Stop possessing it, give it to Frodo, and I will look after him. Bilbo stood for a moment, tense and undecided. Presently he sighed. All right, he said with an effort, I will. He shrugged his shoulders and he smiled rather ruefully. After all, that's what this party business was about, really, to give away lots of birthday presents and somehow make it easier to give it away at the same time. It hasn't made it any easier in the end, but it would be a pity to waste all my preparation, and it would quite spoil the joke. And I love this line here where Gandalf says, indeed, it would take away the only point I ever saw in the affair, said Gandalf. I love that. It's the only point. Gandalf's like, this whole party's stupid. This is a waste of time, but at least you're getting rid of that ring. Yes, there's lesser rings, and I was going to talk about them in the next chapter because the lesser rings that are crafted in Eregion, I've always found very curious, but we never really hear much about the lesser rings. You know, we only hear about the rings of power. I want to know what the lesser rings do. I wonder if they have any cool magic rings that do cool stuff. Like in Oblivion, I got a ring that reflects, damage. Maybe they got like reflect damage rings. Maybe they got like fortify speechcraft rings and stuff. Yeah, no, I think at the beginning when Bilbo first gets the ring, and Gandalf knows about it, I think that Gandalf assumes it's one of the lesser rings. Maybe just a ring that turns you invisible or something. I don't know. And obviously, over time, he begins to get his suspicions, but they kind of talk about that in the book. Magic rings are Gandalf's special interest. I think magic rings are Saruman's special interest. Anyways, Bilbo says, very well. It goes to Frodo with all the rest, and he drew a deep breath. And now I really must be starting, or someone else will catch me. I've said goodbye, and I couldn't bear to do it again. He picked up his bag and moved to the door. You've still got the ring in your pocket, said the wizard. Well, so I have, cried Bilbo, and my will and all the other documents too. You'd better take it and deliver it for me. That will be safest. No, don't give the ring to me, said Gandalf. Put it on the mantelpiece. It will be safe enough there until Frodo comes, and I shall wait for him. Bilbo took out the envelope, but just as he was about to set it by the clock, his hand jerked back and the packet fell on the floor. Before he could pick it up, the wizard stooped, seized it, and set it in its place, and a spasm of anger passed swiftly over the hobbit's face again, and suddenly it gave way to a look of relief and a laugh. Well, that's that, he said, and now I'm off. He went out into the hall. Bilbo chose his favorite stick from the stand, and then he whistled. 3 dwarves came out of different rooms where they had been busy. I wonder what the dwarves thought of Gandalf yelling at him, Like what did the Almatarl welcome in? Yeah, we're still just going through we're just passing Bilbo's party. Yeah, favorite stick, hell yeah. Do they ever mention the name of the dwarves in Bilbo's house the night they left? No, I don't think they're any of the companions from The Hobbit. I think they're just random dwarves, probably dwarves from Erebor. But is everything ready? Asked Bilbo. Everything packed and labeled? Everything, they answered. Well, let's start then. And he stepped out the front door. I like this line here when he's leaving. He says goodbye to Gandalf. Goodbye for the present, Bilbo. Take care of yourself. You're old enough and perhaps wise enough. Take care. I don't care. That's what Bilbo says. Take care. I don't care. Bilbo's just like, peace. Oh yeah, there is a Discord, Megan. Yeah. Join Discord if y'all use Discord. We talk about the book club and we'll be making stories about it and stuff. Take care. I don't care. Don't you worry about me. I'm as happy now as I've ever been, and that is saying a great deal. But the time has come, and I'm being swept off my feet at last, he added. And then in a low voice, as if to himself, he sang softly in the dark. So I'm not going to read most of the songs in the books because I'm gonna read the songs that are important. Yeah, here, just type exclamation point Discord. It'll pop up. Yeah, right there. I'm not gonna sing them. I will recite them in prose. But yeah, Bilbo out. I can't figure out how they rhyme, Lurky. It's hard for me to figure out how they rhyme. I'm not gonna sing it. I can't figure out the rhyme. I came for the singing. Well, you're gonna have to find a new Tolkien reader. Maybe one of them, not this one. I'm gonna go through the songs that there's a lot of the songs. When I first read the books, when I first started reading Lord of the Rings, I kind of skipped a lot of the longer songs because I thought they were super boring, and I couldn't figure out the rhyme scheme. And then after getting into the Silmarillion and like the Greater Legendarium, is when a lot of them have a really cool information in them. Like there's some really cool parts in it. Anyways, so Frodo comes back in, talks to Gandalf. They have that whole thing. You know what I mean? Gandalf tells Frodo that the ring is on the mantelpiece. Find his will and all the other documents in there. You are the master of Bag End now, and also I fancy you'll find a golden ring. The ring, exclaimed Frodo. Has he left me that? I wonder why. Still, it may be useful. It may, and it may not, said Gandalf. I should not make use of it if I were you, but keep it secret and keep it safe. Now I am going to bed. So then, yeah, Frodo becomes master of Bag End. Bilbo's gone. He left with his dwarf friends. I like this line here. One by one they rolled away, filled with very full but unsatisfied hobbits. Gardeners came by the arrangement and removed in wheelbarrows those that had inadvertently remained behind. There's a bunch of hobbits getting passed out, getting carted home in wheelbarrows. That's the Shire Uber is a wheelbarrow. So yeah, the next morning they clean up the party and all that stuff, and they go through. Everybody ends up coming to Bag End, right? Because Bilbo's given away a lot of stuff. And I like that Bilbo is very much a snarky, little sassy boy when he's giving away his stuff. Hi, Rosna. For Adelard took for his very own from Bilbo on an umbrella. Adelard had carried off many unlabeled ones. For Dora Baggins, in memory of a long correspondence with love from Bilbo, on a large waste paper basket. Dora was Drogo's sister and the eldest surviving female relative of Bilbo and Frodo. She was 99 and had written reams of good advice for more than half a century. For Milo Burrows, hoping it will be useful, from BB on a gold pen and ink bottle. Milo never answered letters. For Angelica's use, from Uncle Bilbo on a round convex mirror. She was a young Baggins and too obviously considered her face shapely. For the collection of Hugo Bracegirdle from a contributor on an empty bookcase. Hugo was a great borrower of books and worse than usual at returning them. And the best one, for Lobelia Sackville Baggins, as a present on a case of silver spoons. Bilbo believed that she had acquired a good many of his spoons while he was away on his former journey. Lobelia knew that quite well. When she arrived later in the day, she took the point at once, but she also took the spoons. He's a savage. Bilbo's a savage. We're over 100 people in the stream. That's crazy. Y'all want to listen to me read this book? That's true, Espelon. Gifts? No. Character assassinations? Yes. Reading them for filth. Well, thanks for telling everybody about it, JCDZ. Your ads going without me. All right. If there's an ad break, is there an ad break? Ad break means max break. Be right back 1 second while there's an ad break.
Okay, I'm back. Ads are over. All right. Everybody should have the ads at the same exact time, Earl Grey. They should all run at the same time. Okay. All right, I'm going to speed through this first chapter because the next chapters are way better. I'm going to speed through the rest of this. So Bilbo's got the savage gift giving. I like this part, though. Frodo had a very trying time that afternoon. A false rumor that the whole household was being distributed free spread like wildfire. These hobbits and their dang rumors. The little busybody hobbits. It's just like at the end of The Hobbit when Bilbo gets back and they're auctioning off all of his stuff. You know what I mean? It's just like it. Just give away all his stuff. And then you see Lobelia coming in. Lobelia's coming in. She's being mean. The one where Frodo gets in a fist fight. When does Frodo get in a fist fight? Oh, wait. Just wait till the end. Just wait till the end, though. Grim check. Grim's outside, Artemis. Here comes the Sackville Bagginses again. In the middle of the commotion, the Sackville Bagginses arrived. Frodo had retired for a while and left his friend Merry Brandybuck to keep an eye on things. When Otho loudly demanded to see Frodo, Merry bowed politely. He's indisposed, he said. He's resting. Hiding, you mean, said Lobelia. Anyways, we want to see him, and we mean to see him. Just go and tell him so. Merry left them a long while in the hall, and they had time to discover their parting gift of spoons. It did not improve their tempers. Eventually, they were shown into the study, and Frodo was sitting at a table with a lot of papers in front of him. He looked indisposed to see Sackville Bagginses at any rate, and he stood up, fidgeting with something in his pocket. But he spoke quite politely. "Yo, Avamile, thanks for the gifted subs." Oh, what's up, Wolf Magnolia / Old Taro? The Sackville Bagginses were rather offensive. They began by offering him bad bargain prices for various valuable and unlabeled things. When Frodo replied that the only things specifically directed by Bilbo were being given away, they said the whole affair was very fishy. "One thing is clear to me," said Otho, "and that is that you are doing exceedingly well out of it, and I insist on seeing the will." Otho would have been Bilbo's heir, but for the adoption of Frodo. He read the will carefully and snorted. It was unfortunately very clear and correct, according to the legal customs of hobbits, which demand, among other things, 7 signatures of witnesses in red ink. I want to be a hobbit lawyer. This sounds like regular British people stuff. Yeah, I guess so. I like this part too. After they're kicking everybody out, they went around the hole and evicted 3 young hobbits, 2 boffins and a bulger, who were knocking holes in the walls of one of the cellars. Frodo also had a tussle with young Sancho Proudfoot. That's the fist fight. Old Odo Proudfoot's grandson, who had begun an excavation in the larger pantry where he thought there was an echo. The legend of Bilbo's gold excited both curiosity and hope for legendary gold. Mysteriously obtained, if not positively ill-gotten, is, as everyone knows, anyone's finding unless the search is interrupted. What a rule. Hobbit law. Hobbit law. You can just dig through people's houses looking for gold unless you get interrupted. Then it's just over. Yeah, I forget. Frodo had a fist fight with Sancho. Anyways. Frodo, there came a knock at the front door. He thought it was Lobelia. Gandalf pops in. They're happy. Gandalf tells Frodo, "Do be careful of that ring, Frodo. In fact, it's partly about that I've come by to say a last word." "Well, what do you know already?" "Well, Bilbo told me. I've heard his story, how he found it, and how he used it on his journey." "Which story, I wonder," said Gandalf. "Oh, not what he told the dwarves and put in his book," said Frodo. "He told me the true story after I came to live here. He said you'd pester him until he told you so I'd better know too. No secrets between us, Frodo," he said, "but they are not to go any further. It's mine anyways." "That's interesting," said Gandalf. "Well, what did you think of it all?" "If you mean inventing all that about a present, well, I thought the true story much more likely, and I couldn't see the point of altering it at all, so it was very unlike Bilbo to do so. Anyways, and I thought it rather odd."
So did I, but odd things happen to people that have such treasures. So it's interesting there when you realize that Bilbo started his journey lying about the ring, showing that like the ring obviously already had some sort of a hold or influence on Bilbo. And then also, fun fact, if you read the original, which I don't have, but the first editions of The Hobbit, the Riddles in the Dark chapter is completely different than what is explained in this. And the reason is because when Tolkien first wrote The Hobbit, he didn't intend it to be a prelude to Lord of the Rings, and it wasn't until he was writing Lord of the Rings, and I might be slightly wrong on some of this, so don't quote me, but whatever. He intended it to just be a standalone story, and then when it needed to fit into the narrative, he actually rewrote the Riddles in the Dark. The original version has Bilbo winning the ring in the riddle game, and then just kind of leaving, and him and Gollum are friends. Like Gollum isn't upset about losing the ring. He allows it to go to Bilbo, and so he rewrote the chapter with the version that we know, which is kind of a fun little tidbit because obviously The Hobbit and this are written to be a history book, as we saw in the prologue, kind of a story. And so Bilbo lied in his original book, his original writings. He lied about how he got the ring, and then it was rewritten to fit this story. I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, if you read the original version of The Hobbit, Riddles in the Dark is completely different. It's completely different. That's why there's some confusion when you read The Hobbit. You're like, wait, this isn't how it happens in Lord of the Rings? And then, yeah, it is. Yeah, The Hobbit was written for his kids, as to be like a story for his kids. And then as he was writing this, he realized, oh, The Hobbit is part of this grander world that I'm creating. You have the replica first edition? I'll have to look for one of those, Earl Grey. That sounds sick. Yeah, I've never read one. I've never read the original. I just know that it's that. Okay, so that's kind of the end of chapter 1. I have a note right here. So then, yeah, Gandalf leaves. I'm not certain. I'll say no more. I may be able to tell you something when I come back. I'm going off at once, so this is goodbye. I thought you were staying for at least a week, and I was looking forward to your help. I did mean to, but I have had to change my mind. I may be away for a good while, but I'll come see you again as soon as I can. Expect me when you see me. I shall slip in quietly, and I shan't often be visiting the Shire openly again. I find that I've become a rather unpopular. They say I am a nuisance or a disturber of the peace. Some people are actually accusing me of spiriting Bilbo away. So Gandalf takes off. Frodo thought the old wizard looked unusually bent, almost as if he was carrying a great weight. The evening was closing in, and his cloaked figure quickly vanished into the twilight. Frodo did not see him again for a long time. So what do we think? First chapter, probably, it's a good chapter, probably the least exciting chapter in the book, but it's a good one. 11 out of 10 readings. Thanks. I'm not the best reader. So then we get to Shadow of the Past. Shadow of the Past is chapter 2. There's some good stuff in here. There's some good stuff in this chapter. More exciting stuff to talk about, for sure. Do voices for the characters. I'm not good at voices. I'll try. I'll try. Yeah, the first chapter is nostalgic. It reads nostalgic. It's a happy chapter. You know, it's really the only happy chapter in the book. Do your best, Andy Serkis. Oh, you don't want to hear me do a Gollum? I can't do that. Yeah, I'm going to read all the characters as Arthur Morgan. I'm going to read Gandalf as Arthur Morgan. So the talk didn't die down in the Hobbiton. Everybody's talking about it. I like this part here. The story of Bilbo's disappearance became a fireside story for young hobbits, and eventually Mad Baggins, who used to vanish with a bang and a flash and reappear with bags of jewels and gold, became a fair character of legend and lived long after the true events were forgotten. But in the meantime, the general opinion of the neighborhood was that Bilbo, who had always been rather cracked, had at last gone quite mad and had run off into the blue and had undoubtedly fallen into a pool or a river and come to a tragic but hardly untimely end. The blame was mostly laid on Gandalf. And so everybody in the Hobbits don't like Gandalf. They think he's a nuisance. They don't trust him. Frodo began to develop Bilbo's reputation for being kind of crazy. Lived alone as Bilbo had done. He had many good friends, especially among the younger hobbits, mostly descendants of the old Took, who had been fond of Bilbo and often in and out of Baggin. Folco, Boffin, and Fredegar Bolger. Fredegar Bolger mentioned right there. Everybody better put some respect on Fatty Bolger. His two closest friends were Peregrine Took and Merry Brandybuck. His real name was Meriadoc, but that was seldom remembered. Does he say Meriadoc in the movies? Do they ever call him Meriadoc in the movies? I think he says his name to Theoden in the movies. I think he mentions himself as Meriadoc to Theoden, right? Gandalf does? Oh, yeah. Okay, all right. I haven't seen the movies in like 2 years. So don't judge me. Don't judge me. Gandalf calls him that? All right, okay. Cool. I was curious. Does Treebeard? I don't know. I know that they say Peregrine. I know that he says Peregrine. I wasn't sure about Meriadoc. Young Meriadoc. Okay. All right. Everybody's coming at me. I'm just asking. 2 years? It's been 2 or 3 years. Yeah, I haven't seen him in a minute. I read the books more than I watch the movies. I knew that Theoden calls him Meriadoc. Don't be hasty. Don't be hasty. Okay, so yeah, this is Frodo's just beginning of this chapter. Frodo's just kind of chilling. He's doing the thing. He's living at Bag End. It's pretty exciting stuff. I do like this part. He's just kind of hanging out, missing Bilbo, chilling, wandering around, especially in the autumn, about the wildlands and strange visions. This part's interesting. Strange visions of mountains he'd never seen came into his dreams. I think dreams play a big point in the books that we don't really see much in the movies, maybe. They do. I for whatever reason, when I'm reading these, I make note in my head of times that Frodo mentions his dream, especially with Frodo. Frodo mentions his dreams, and there's times when Frodo sleeps and there's no dreams. Like when he's in Woodhall in the next chapter, you notice that there's no dreams. So strange visions of mountains that he'd never seen came into his dreams. I wonder which mountains he was thinking, you know what I mean? Misty Mountains? He's talking about the Efelduath? Who knows? So it went on until his 40s were running out and his 50th birthday was drawing near. 50 was a number that he felt was somehow significant or ominous. Frodo began to feel restless. The old paths seemed too well trodden. He looked at maps and wondered what lay beyond their edges. Maps made in the Shire showed mostly white spaces beyond its borders. I like that the maps that he's looking at, they just don't, the hobbits are so insular, they don't see much. Yeah, the one in Bombadil is important. I mean, I feel like at a certain point in the book, his dreams kind of change from dreams to straight up just visions, kind of. And I feel like the influence on his dreams is a direct influence of him possessing the ring, There were rumors of strange things happening in the world outside, and Gandalf had not appeared or sent any message for several years. Frodo gathered all the news he could. Elves, who seldom walked in the Shire, could now be seen passing westward through the woods in the evening, passing and not returning. They were leaving Middle-earth and were no longer concerned with its troubles. There were, however, dwarves on the road in unusual numbers. The ancient east-west road ran through the Shire and at its end at the Grey Havens. Now, the Grey Havens is a run by Círdan, the shipwright, who is one of the oldest elves. I don't remember if Círdan is one of the first elves that awoke. He's up there though. Círdan is one of the oldest elves in all of Middle Earth. He never went to Valinor too, which is interesting because in the First Age, was he one of the first awoken? I'm not sure. Did he wake at Cuiviénen? I thought that he was maybe born like right after that, but it doesn't matter that much. He's real old, and he's got a beard. He's the only elf with a beard. Well, not the only. I think there's one other. It doesn't matter. Círdan never goes to Valinor. Círdan, we'll get to this in the Silmarillion eventually, but Círdan runs the Grey Havens. He's the shipwright who makes the ships that the elves take to Valinor when they leave. He was one of the first awoken. All right, that's cool. I thought he might be, but I wasn't sure. No, he didn't see the light of the two trees because Círdan never left Middle Earth. Círdan never went to Valinor. He forsook going to Valinor, and he always stayed in Middle Earth to build boats to send people to Valinor. I believe Alaska. I guess he would have. No, the lamps were overthrown before he didn't. No elf saw the lamps because the lamps were overthrown before any of the children of Iluvatar were awoken. Because Eluthingle. Anyways, you see the elves. He gave up his ring, didn't he? He did. Yes. We'll get to Círdan's ring. We'll get to Círdan's ring. Don't worry about Círdan's ring. Name. They were troubled in some spoken whispers of the enemy and of the land of Mordor. That name the hobbits only knew in legends of the dark past, like a shadow in the background of their memories, but it was ominous and disquieting. It seemed that the evil power in Mirkwood had been driven out by the White Council, only to reappear in greater strength in the old stronghold of Mordor. The Dark Tower had been rebuilt, it was said, and from there the power was spreading far and wide. And away, far east and south, there were wars and growing fear. Orcs were multiplying again in the mountains. Trolls were abroad, no longer dull-witted, but cunning and armed with dreadful weapons. And there were murmured hints of creatures more terrible than all these, but they had no name. I think that the creatures more terrible than all these, but had no name, is a reference to the Nazgul, personally. I thought Galadriel had, and that's why Fëanor wanted her hair for the Silmarils. Galadriel and Fëanor both saw the light of the trees. Yeah, she was born in Valinor. We're going to talk about Galadriel next chapter. So I got to speed it up, otherwise I'm going to run out of time. Yo, Chop Magic, thanks for the sub. The gifted sub. Yeah, Chaotic Moose, this is what's hard about this, is there's so many things I want to talk about, but I don't want to spoil later parts of the book. So we see Ted Sandyman again. We hate Ted Sandyman. I hate Ted Sandyman. Ted Sandyman sucks. He straight up sucks. But they are talking in the bar, and this is an interesting thing. So they're spreading rumors, as hobbits do. And they say here, Sam said, laughing with the rest, "What about these tree men, these giants, as you might call them? They do say that one of the one bigger than a tree was seen up way beyond the North Moors not long back. Who's they? My cousin Hal, for one. He works for Mr. Boffin at Overhill and goes up to the North Farthing for the hunting. He saw one. Says he did, perhaps. Your Hal's always been saying he's seen things, and maybe he sees things that ain't there. But this one was as big as an elm tree, and walking 7 yards to a stride if it was an inch. Then I bet it wasn't an inch, and what he saw was an elm tree, as is not. But this one was walking, I tell you, and there ain't no elm tree on the North Moors." "Then Hal can't have seen one," said Ted. And there was some laughing and some clapping, and the audience seemed to think that Ted had scored a point. Yo, Wild Soul, thanks for the gifted. I believe Hal too. You're talking about ints. "All the same," said Sam, "you can't deny that others behind our Hellfest have seen some queer folks crossing the Shire. crossing it, mind you, and there are more that have turned back at the borders. The bounders have never been so busy before. I've heard the elves are moving west, and they do say that they're going to the harbors out beyond the White Towers. Sam waved his arm vaguely. Neither he nor any of them knew how far it was to the sea, past the old towers, beyond the western borders of the Shire, but it was an old tradition that away over there stood the Grey Havens, Círdan, which at times the elven ships set sail never to return, because they're sailing to Valinor. But, yeah, they're talking about seeing Ints, and I think this is like the first part of the book when you're seeing like the dwarves moving around, you're seeing the elves moving around, and you're seeing, Ints north of the Shire. It's like the first part of the book. Wild Soul, thank you. It's like the first part of the book that you see the wider conflict, and I think that the movies do. This is not a slight against the movies. It's a fair critique of the movies versus the books. The movies don't do a very good job, in my opinion, of showing the wider conflict, because the War of the Ring, the war that happens in this story, is not confined to just what we see in the movie. It's not just confined to the members of the Fellowship. It's confined. It's everywhere. You'll see the forces of Sauron, the forces of Mordor. It's everywhere. It's a war across all of Middle Earth. It's not just Helm's Deep and Pelennor Fields, And I really enjoy like the building of this like wider conflict in the books that you don't get a very good idea of it in the movies. Obviously, there's not enough time. There's not enough time to set all that, to show all of that. Anyways, so yeah, they're talking about elves sailing away. Ted's being a jerk. Nobody likes Ted Sandyman. Sam loves the elves. They do a good job of that in the movies. And now we see Gandalf finally reappear after his long absence for 3 years after the party had been away. So this is 3 years after the party. He paid Frodo a brief visit. After taking a good time and looking at him, he went off again. During the next year or two, he turned up fairly often, coming unexpectedly after dusk and going off without warning before sunrise. He would not discuss his own business and journeys and seemed chiefly interested in small news about Frodo's health and doings. And suddenly his visits had ceased. It was over 9 years since Frodo had seen or heard of him, and he began to think that the wizard would never return and had given up all interest in hobbits. But that evening, as Sam was walking home and twilight was fading, there came once a familiar tap on the study window. Frodo welcomed his old friend with surprise and great delight. They looked hard at one another. "All well, eh?" said Gandalf. "You look the same as ever, Frodo." "So do you," Frodo replied, but secretly he thought that Gandalf looked older and more careworn. He pressed him for news of himself and of the wide world, and soon they were deep in talk and stayed up far into the night. So this part's juicy. This part's juicy. I don't know if it was an int wife. I don't think it was. I think it was an int. Personally, I don't think it was an int wife. Anyways. So next morning, they're talking, right? They're talking. Does anybody have any questions about anything that's happened? Nothing's too crazy yet. Anyways. Let's see. "Last night you began to tell me strange things about my ring, Gandalf," he said, "and then you stopped because you said that some such matters were best left until daylight. Don't you think you had better finish now? You say the ring is dangerous, far more dangerous than I guess, but in what way?" "In many ways," answered the wizard. "It is far more powerful than I ever dared to think at first. So powerful that in the end it would utterly overcome anyone of a mortal race who possessed it, and it would possess him. In Eregion, long ago, many elven rings were made, magic rings as you would call them, and they were, of course, of various kinds, some more potent and some less. The lesser rings were only essays in the craft before it was full grown, and to the elven smiths they were but trifles, yet still to my mind dangerous for mortals. But the great rings, the rings of power, they were perilous." And so, yeah, we get the Eregion mention. And this is where this is where you start getting into some Second Age lore, and I, in full disclosure, am not the best with Second Age. Second Age is not my specialty at all. But obviously, Eregion is a dwarven, it's an elvish. It was an elvish kingdom of in the Second Age, not really in the Silmarillion, mostly in the appendices. You'll read about it, but its lord was Celebrimbor, who was the grandson of Feanor. And he was the chief crafter of the Rings of Power. I thought all Lord of the Rings were your specialty. I don't know about that. I am not a Second Age expert. Somebody in here probably knows way more about Second Age than I do. Anyways, Celebrimbor smithed the rings in Eregion. We're going to do a reading after this book. We're going to do a deep dive into Eregion. Yes, Eregion is near Moria. Yeah, I'm a fraud. I'm sorry. In the book, the land that used to be Eregion is known as Holland. We're going to be traveling through Holland before the Fellowship gets to Moria. They go through the lands of Holland where Eregion used to be. Eregion would be like an elvish kingdom, right? Austin Edhill, I think, is the main city within Eregion where most of the rings were crafted. Yeah, and that's Anatar was there before. Yeah, he was ousted. We're gonna do a deep dive into Eregion after the movie. Maybe we'll do that, or after the books. We'll do it. We will do an Eregion dive because I don't know that much about it, so it'll be fun to learn together. Anyways, I'm always curious about the smaller, trifle, lesser rings that were crafted during that time. But I really like this chapter, or this paragraph. A mortal Frodo who keeps one of the great rings does not die, but he does not grow or obtain more life. He merely continues, until at last every minute is a weariness. And if he often uses the ring to make himself invisible, he fades. He becomes in the end invisible permanently, and walks in the twilight under the eye of the dark power that rules the rings. Yes, sooner or later if he is strong or well-meaning to begin with, but neither strength nor good purpose will last. Sooner or later, the dark power will devour him. And I just love that this, like, it's not immortality. You know what I mean? It's like, it's such an interesting way of talking about like the stretching of a life. It's not immortality. It's not like you're a vampire. I just love that he merely continues. I like that magic, there's a lot of magic in the Lord of the Rings. There's a lot of that like fantasy-esque magic stuff. But I love how the magic in Lord of the Rings is subtle. It's not like throwing lightning bolts. Sometimes it is, but it's not like casting spells. It's just like, it's subtle. It's subtle. It's like, it's a magic that permeates the natural world around everybody. It's not just, ads. Dang, again? Are we already back to another ad break? Brings on an ad. Sorry, guys. I have them set at the lowest of thing. Burning hands. What are we talking about? Are we talking about Gil-galad right now? But I just love that magic's not it's not this like overstated thing. Where's the magic to kill ads? You could link it to your thing. I'm pausing. Coffee break.
Ad's over. Ad's done. All right. Anyways, I was talking about how I love how magic is not like it's a soft magic. Yeah, it's subtle. It's subtle. It permeates. It's not. If you become invisible permanently, isn't that a bad for the ring? Can he still be found if that happens? Yes, because the ring is a power. The ring is a power. It's not just like a thing. And an E-Star would never use ChatGPT. That's true. Yeah. The dogs is in. The dogs is in. That one's Beetlejuice. Anyways, let's continue. So he's talking about how the dark power will eventually devour anybody who possesses a great ring, not the elven rings. Do I have a prime command? No, I don't have a prime command. I don't know how to do that. JC Dizzy, I'm the best streamer on the platform. Of course I don't have that. That's sarcasm, by the way. Anyways, I'm going to keep going. How long have you known this? Asked Frodo. So I think I highlighted this because I wanted to read it. How long have you known this? Asked Frodo at length. And how much did Bilbo know? Bilbo knew no more than he told you, I'm sure, said Gandalf. He would certainly have never passed on to you anything that he thought would be a danger, even though I promised to look after you. He thought the ring was very beautiful, very useful at need, and if anything was wrong or queer, it was himself. He said that it was growing on his mind, and he was always worrying about it, but he did not suspect that the ring itself was to blame. Though he had found out that the thing needed looking after, it did not seem to always be of the same size or weight. It shrank or expanded in an odd way and might suddenly slip off the finger where it had been tight. Yes, he'd warned me of that in his last letter, said Frodo, so I've always kept it on its chain. I love that the ring can, do its thing. Very wise, said Gandalf, but for his long life, Bilbo never connected it with the ring at all. He took all the credit for that to himself, and he was very proud of it, though he was getting restless and uneasy, thin and stretched, he said, a sign that the ring was getting control. So then he asks, how long have you known this? And Gandalf says, I've known as much as only the wise know, Frodo. But if you mean known about this ring, well, I still not know, one might say, but there's a last test to make, but I no longer doubt my guess. When did I first begin to guess, he mused, searching back in memory. Let me see. It was in the year that the White Council drove out the dark power from Mirkwood, just before the Battle of Five Armies, that Bilbo found his ring. A shadow fell on my heart then. Interesting, Gandalf, though I did not know it yet what I feared. I wondered often how Gollum came by a great ring as plainly as it was. And that was at least clear from the first. Then I heard Bilbo's strange story of how he had won it, and I couldn't believe it. When I last got the truth out of him, I saw at once that he'd been trying to put his claim to the ring beyond doubt, much like Gollum had with his birthday present. The lies were too much alike for my comfort. Clearly the ring had an unwholesome power that set work on its keeper at once, and that was the first real warning I had that all was not well. I told Bilbo often that such rings were better left unused, but he resented it, and soon got angry, and there was little else that I could do. I could not take it from him without doing greater harm, and I had no right to do so anyways. I could only watch and wait, and I might perhaps have consulted Saruman the White, but something held me back. So you see there again that the original version of The Hobbit is different than the revised edition of The Hobbit. And I like that. Big fan of that. Frodo asks, who is Saruman? I've never heard of him before. And Gandalf says, maybe not. Hobbits are, or were, keyword, or were, no concern of his. Yet he's great among the wise. He's the chief of my order and the head of the council. His knowledge is deep, but his pride has grown with it, and he takes ill any meddling. The lore of elven rings, great and small, is his province. He has long studied it, seeking the lost secrets of their making. But when the rings were debated in the council, all that he would reveal to us of his ring lore told against my fears. So my doubts slept, but uneasily. Still I watched and I waited. So, yeah, that's, whatever. Interesting.
And so time passed, and I waited until that night when he left the house. He said and did things that filled me with such fear that no words of Saruman could allay. I knew at last something dark and deadly was at work, and I've spent most of the years since then in finding the truth of it. There wasn't any permanent harm done, was there? Asked Frodo anxiously. He would get all right in time, wouldn't he? Be able to rest in peace? He felt better at once, said Gandalf, but there was only one power meaning Sauron, in this world that knows all about the rings and their effects. And as far as I know, there is no power in the world that knows all about hobbits. So here, power is capitalized, and I'm assuming power in this context is referring to Sauron specifically. Saruman, you had one job. True, you had one job, Saruman. Yeah, he's gonna have a few jobs in this book. Sharky. Among the wise, I'm the only one that goes in for Hobbit lore. Yeah, see, somebody earlier said that rings are Gandalf's special interest. No, rings are Saruman's special interest, and Gandalf's special interest is Hobbit lore. Gandalf just loves Hobbits. He's a big Hobbit fan. I'm the only one that goes in for Hobbit lore? Hobbit lore? I mean, it is kind of fun. An obscure branch of knowledge, but full of surprises. Soft as butter they can be, and yet sometimes as tough as old tree roots. I think it likely that someone resists the rings far longer than most of the wise would believe, and I don't think you need worry about Bilbo. So Bilbo had the ring for a long time. Pretty cool. But then here you see something we mentioned earlier where he says, for he gave it up in the end of his own accord, an important point. It is an important point. I was not going to trouble you about Bilbo anymore. Once he had let the thing go, it is for you that I feel responsible. And Bilbo's the only person who gave up the ring, who possessed it for any period of time. He's the only person who gave it up willingly. That's important. That's important. Anyone else get bit mixed up with Sauron and Saruman's names being similar? Yeah, sometimes you can read it differently, but I think it's important that they're similar. I think that was on purpose. Anyways, ever since Bilbo left, I've been deeply concerned about you and all these charming, absurd, helpless hobbits. It would be a grievous blow to the world if the dark power overcame the Shire, if all your kind, jolly, stupid... Gandalf's calling them stupid. If all your kind, jolly, stupid Bolgers, Hornblowers, Boffins, Bracegirdles, and the rest, not to mention the ridiculous Bagginses, became enslaved. We called them ridiculous and stupid. Anyways, Frodo shuddered. Yeah. But here you see an important point where he's saying, to tell you the truth, I believe that hitherto, mark you, he has entirely overlooked the existence of hobbits. You should be thankful, but your safety has passed. He does not need you, and he has many more useful servants, but he won't forget you again, and hobbits are as miserable slaves would please him far more than hobbits happy and free. There is such thing as malice and revenge. Sauron's a jerk. Sauron is a jerk. Now, Gandalf's really wilding out. Revenge, said Frodo. Revenge for what? I still don't understand what all this have to do with Bilbo and myself and our ring. It has everything to do with it, said Gandalf. You do not know the real peril, but you shall. I was not sure of it myself when I was last here, but the time has come to speak. Give me the ring for a moment. And this is an interesting point here. Frodo took it from his breecher's pocket, where it was clasped to a chain that hung from his belt. He unfastened it and handed it slowly to the wizard. It felt suddenly very heavy, as if either it or Frodo himself was in some way reluctant for Gandalf to touch it. Gandalf held it up, and it looked to be made of pure and solid gold. That line right there. People say Gandalf never held the ring, but Gandalf did hold the ring. He held it. He wasn't using tongs. He held the ring. Gandalf holds the ring twice. He's going to do it again. Gandalf held it up and looked to be made of pure and solid gold. Can you see any markings on it? He asked. No, said Frodo. There are none. It is quite plain, and it never shows a scratch or sign of wear. Well, then look. And to Frodo's astonishment and distress, the wizard threw it suddenly into the middle of a glowing corner of the fire. Frodo gave a cry and groped for the tongs, but Gandalf held him back. Wait, he said in a commanding voice, and Frodo gave a quick look from under his bristling brows. And no apparent change came over it. But then Gandalf pulls it out and says, "It's quite cool. It is quite cool." Isn't that what it says when somebody subscribes, I think? It's quite cool. Said Gandalf, "Take it." Frodo received it on his shrinking palm, and it seemed to have become thicker and heavier than ever. "Hold it up, Gandalf," said Gandalf, "and look closely." He held it by the chain. Maybe he held it by the chain. I don't know, man. I'm just saying Gandalf held it twice. No, he needs to subscribe right now. It's quite cool. It's quite cool. Anyways, yeah, then he sees the inscription on the ring. You can see it right there. Boom. Boom, bop, bam. I can't read the fiery letters. It is the language of that of Mordor, which I will not utter here. But in the common tongue is what is said, close enough. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. It's only 2 lines of a long verse, long known in elfin lore. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where shadows lie. 1 ring to rule them, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where shadows lie. Whoa. I'm not going to utter it here in Khuzdul, dude. Or no, Khuzdul's Dwarvish. Whatever. Anyways, this is the Master Ring, the 1 ring to rule them all. And so, yeah, you have it confirmed in 4K, caught in 4K. It's caught in 4K. It's caught in 4K. He's got the ring. It is the 1 ring. This part I feel is interesting to me though, because it says Frodo sat silent and motionless. Fear seemed to stretch out a vast hand, like a dark cloud in the east, and looming up to engulf him. "This ring," he stammered. "How on earth did it come to me?" And I like that Sauron in the book, he's represented a lot as a hand, like a groping hand reaching out, of fear, and like this dark hand of anxiety, basically, that just, it's not the first time you'll see it again at Amon Hen, at the Seat of Seeing, right before the breaking of the Fellowship. You'll see Sauron's like hand. His I like the visual representation of Sauron as a hand. I think it's interesting. Like at his thought fingers. He's got thought fingers, just like. Meddling. Ring goes on hand. Yeah, Sauron's got a hand. And then we get a little bit of the history. That is a very long story. They're asking on how on earth, Frodo asks, how on earth did it come to me? Hard to put a ring on an eyeball. Well, the actual like fiery eyeball, I'm pretty sure the fiery eyeball on top of Barad-dûr, that's a movie interpretation of Sauron. I think it works really well in the movies. But in the books, we'll see, I think Sauron has a physical form. He has that, like, he has a physical form. So his eye is more of a mental representation, and the hand as well. Pointing out the motif. Yes. I picture it in like Nosferatu, the shadowy hand creeping across the land. I've never seen Nosferatu. I've never seen it. I'm a Lord of the Rings guy, not a vampire guy. Yo, thanks for the follow, by the way. Anyways, how on earth did it come to me? Said Gandalf, that is a very long story, and the beginning lies back in the Black Years, which only the lore masters now remember. If I were to tell you that tale, we should still be sitting here when spring had passed into winter. But last night I told you of Sauron the Great, the Dark Lord. The rumors that you've heard are true. He has indeed arisen again and left his hold on Mirkwood and returned to his ancient fastness in the Dark Tower of Mordor. That name even you hobbits have heard of, like a shadow on the borders of old stories. Always after a defeat and a respite, the shadow takes another shape and grows again. And then here we have it. Maybe one of the best lines in the book. Maybe one of the best lines in the book. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. So do I, said Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. God damn. That's a good line, right? I mean, that's the best. It's top 3. It's top 3 best lines in the entire book. We don't even need to read it. We're done. We're done. That's it. Ended there. No, I love that line for so many reasons. Yeah, I can read it again. So do I, said Gandalf, and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us. God damn. And already, Frodo, our time is beginning to look black. The enemy is fast becoming very strong. His plans are far from ripe, I think, but they are ripening. We shall be hard put to it. We should be very hard put to it, even if it were not for this dreadful chance. The chance being that they have the ring. The enemy still lacks one thing to give him strength, and knowledge to beat down all resistance, break the last defenses, and cover all the lands in a second darkness. He lacks this one ring. The 3, fairest of all, the elf lords hid from him, and his hand never touched them or sullied them. 7 the dwarf kings possessed, but 3 he has recovered, and the other the dragons have consumed. 9 he gave to mortal men, proud and great, and so ensnared them. Long ago they fell under his dominion of the one, and they became ring wraiths, shadows under his great shadow, his most terrible servants. Long ago, it is many a year since the 9 walked abroad. Yet who knows? As the shadow grows once more, they too may walk again. But come, we will not speak of such things even in the morning of the Shire. Kind of cool. I have that quote on your wall. That's a great quote to have on the wall. Any guesses on why they moved these lines to Moria in the movies? I think that in the movies, I think that where they put that line in the movies works really well, because I think at that point in the movies, Gandalf says that line as they're crossing through Moria, and I think at that point in the movies, you're more emotionally connected to Frodo, and you can see in the movies he has that doubt. He has the doubt, and they're in the darkness of the mountains, and it's an encouraging line. It's a hopeful line. And I think that it works really well in the place that they put it in the movie. Which parts of Middle Earth did the 9 rule? We don't know much about the 9 of the Nazgul. I think some of them were Númenórean lords. One was a dude from Harad. The Witch King of Angmar, obviously. But other than the Witch King and I can't remember his name, the other one. We don't know much about the Nazgul. Yeah, we only really know about the Witch King. Oh, Khamûl. Khamûl the Easterling is one that I think is kind of canon, but for the most part, we really only know about the Witch King. We don't really know which lords of men had them. Maybe Pharazôn? No, definitely not Pharazôn. No, not Pharazôn. We know what happens to Pharazôn. A dork loser. What a dork loser. Our Pharazôn, he meets a big old rock, dude. And then the short. We'll get to that when we get to the Alcalalabeth. Don't worry. No, we don't. But other than that, yeah, we don't really know who a lot of the. Anyway, so it is now. The 9 have been gathered to himself. The 7 also, or else they are destroyed. The 3 are hidden still. And Gandalf doesn't mention that he has one of the 3. By the way, everybody. Yeah. Gandalf has the ring Narya, the Ring of Fire, which was given to Gandalf by Círdan, the shipwright. Círdan, the elf at the Grey Havens, gives Gandalf the ring when the Istari arrive in Middle-earth. Not to spoil anything, but Gandalf has one of the elven rings. He's not saying it, which is smart. He doesn't need to tell Frodo. Frodo doesn't need to know he has one. You always mix up Narya. It's Narya, Nenya, and Vilya. And you can remember Narya, Nenya, and Vilya by saying Gandalf has Narya. Just remember Gandalf has Narya. You just need to remember Gandalf has Narya. I don't have a fun way of remembering how Gandalf. But Galadriel has Nenya because Galadriel's ring is Nenya business. It's Nenya business. Yeah, see? Megan knows what's up. Galadriel has Nenya business. And Elrond has Vilya because Elrond will ya help ya. He will help ya. Elrond has Vilya. He will help ya. Because Elrond helps people. That's how I remember it. Anyways. So it's a dreadful chance, right? Frodo has the ring. It's a dreadful chance they can do it. And then he says, "Why wasn't it destroyed?" cried Frodo. "And how did the enemy ever come to lose it if he was so strong and it was so precious to him?" He clutched the ring in his hand as if he already saw dark fingers stretching out to seize it. Yeah, there's the dark fingers again. I love that. Yo, Yoshi. It's quite cool. It's quite cool. Thanks for the gifted. "It was taken from him," said Gandalf. This is a part that very differs in the movies, and this is a part that I wish was not different in the movies, personally. "It was taken from him," said Gandalf. "The strength of the elves to resist him was greater long ago, and not all men were estranged from them. The men of Westerness came to their aid, and that is a chapter of ancient history which it might be good to recall. For there was sorrow then too, and gathering dark, but great valor, and great deeds that were not wholly vain. One day perhaps I will tell you all the tale, or you shall hear it told in full by one who knows it best. But for the moment, since all you need to know about this thing that came to you, and that will be tale enough, this is all I will say. It was Gil-galad, Elven King, Gil-galad, Elven King, and Elendil of the Westerness who overthrew Sauron, and though they themselves perished in the deed. And Isildur, Elendil's son, cut the ring from Sauron's hand and took it for his own. Then Sauron was vanquished, and his spirit fled and was hidden for long years until his shadow took shape again in Mirkwood." So, Gil-galad was an Elven King. Gil-galad was an Elven King. Gil and Dill. Okay, I know what you mean by Dill, I think, and I don't know about that. Anyways, Gil-galad and Elendil are the two that killed Sauron. Sauron didn't die by Isildur cutting his finger off. That is not how Sauron died. Sauron was thrown down on the battlefield by Gil-galad wielding the Spear of Aeglos, and Elendil wielding Narsil. And then after Sauron was defeated, his body was broken, as Theoden said, that is when Isildur cut the rings from Sauron's hand. And I wish in the movies we saw a little bit more Elendil and Gil-galad, especially Gil-galad. We get a good scene of Elendil, but Gil-galad deserved a little bit more respect in the movies. I'm just saying. You could have thrown Gil-galad with Aeglos in there. I mean, there's like one scene of Gil-galad going like, bleh. That's it, right? Gil-galad, who's your daddy? Okay, I'm not even going to get into the who's Gil-galad's dad. I'm not gonna get into who's Gil-galad's dad. I don't know. Some people say it's Ordredreth. I don't know. He can be your dad. Oh, well, yeah, but we're talking about who's Gil-galad's dad. Not who's your dad. Anyways, moving Gil-saddy. Oh, that's so funny. Bombadil's Gil-galad's dad? That's the craziest theory I've ever heard in my life, TJ. That is unhinged, and I love it. I'm here for it. Yeah, that's what I'm going to start telling people. When they ask me who Gil-galad's dad is, I'm going to start saying it's Tom Bombadil. All right. Anyways, we're moving on. We're not gonna get bogged down with Tom Bombadil right now. Okay, the ring was lost. It fell into the great river Anduin and vanished. For Isildur was marching north along the east banks of the river and near the Gladden fields when he was waylaid by the orcs of the mountains, and almost all his folks were slain. He leapt into the waters, but the ring slipped from his finger as he swam. But then the orcs saw him and killed him with arrows. Gandalf paused, and there in the dark pools amid the Gladden fields, he said, the ring passed out of knowledge and legend, and even so much of its history is known now only to a few, and the council of the wise could discover no more. But at last I can carry on the story, I think. So then we're going to get into the story of Smeagol. Gil-galad wouldn't be hiking that way, though. Are you telling me, Earl Grey, that you don't think the son of Tom Bombadil could be a High King? I bet he could. Anyways, long after, but still very long ago, there lived by the banks of the great river on the edge of the Wilderland, a clever-handed and quiet-footed little people. I guess they were of hobbit kind, akin to the fathers of the Stoors, for they loved the river and often swam in it, or made little boats of reeds. And there was among them a family of high repute, for it was large and wealthier than most, and it was ruled by a grandmother of the folk, stern and wise in old lore, such as they had. And the most inquisitive and curious-minded of that family was called Smeagol. He was interested in roots and beginnings. He dived into deep pools, and he burrowed under trees and growing plants. He tunneled into green mounds, and he ceased to look up at the hilltops, or the leaves or trees or flowers in the opening air. He held his head, and his eyes were downward. He had a friend called Deagle, of similar sort, sharper-eyed, but not so quick and strong, and on a time they took a boat and went down to the Gladden fields, where there were great beds of iris and flowering reeds. There Smeagol got out and went nosing about the banks, but Deagle sat in the boat and fished. Suddenly a great fish took his hook, and before he knew where he was, he dragged out and down into the water to the bottom. Then he let go of his line, for he thought he saw something shining in the riverbed, and holding his breath, he grabbed at it. He came up sputtering with weeds in his hair and a handful of muds, and he swam to the bank, and behold, when he washed the mud away, there in his hand lay a beautiful golden ring, and it shone and glittered in the sun, so that his heart was glad. But Smeagol had been watching him from behind a tree, and as Deagle gloated over the ring, Smeagol came softly up behind. This is like my favorite part. This is my favorite part. Oh, yeah, what's up from Canada, fat packing with Smitty? This is like my favorite part because Gandalf, when you're reading it, this is Gandalf telling the story of Smeagol. And it implies that Gandalf is doing, no, it's implying that Gandalf is doing Smeagol voice, because he doesn't paraphrase Smeagol. He gives direct quotes. He's like, "Give us that Deagle, my love," said Smeagol over his friend's shoulder. Like, it's saying Gandalf is doing a Smeagol. I read it as Gandalf doing a Smeagol impression. Ads again? I'm gonna turn off ads for this. But then you'll get pre-rolls. Okay, we're back. Ads over? Ads done? Sick. All right. Yeah, so Gandalf's doing Deagle voice, or Smeagol voice, anyways, because it's my birthday, my love, and I wants it. I can't do a Smeagol voice. How do you do Smeagol voice? Smeagol sounds like the singer for AC/DC, by the way. Just picture AC/DC. Anyways, we've heard the story. Gollum kills him. But I do like this part here that you see a little bit more of Gollum than you do in the movies. No one ever found out what had become of Deagle. He was murdered far from home and his body was cunningly hidden. But Smeagol returned alone and he found that none of his family could see him and he was wearing the ring. He was very pleased with this discovery and he concealed it. And he used it to find out secrets, and he put his knowledge to crooked and malicious uses. He became sharp-eyed and keen-eared for all that was hurtful. The ring had given him power according to his stature. It is not to be wondered at that he became very unpopular and was shunned when visible by all his relations. They kicked him, and he bit their feet. He took to thieving and going about muttering to himself and gurgling in his throat. So they called him Gollum, and cursed him, and told him to go far away, and his grandmother, desiring peace, expelled him from the family and turned him out of her hole. He wandered in loneliness, weeping for a little for the hardness of the world, and he journeyed up the river till he came to a stream that flowed down from the mountains. And he went away, and he caught fish in deep pools with invisible fingers and ate them raw. One day it was very hot, and as he was bending over a pool, he felt a burning on the back of his head, and a dazzling light from the water pained his eyes. He wondered at it, for he had almost forgotten about the sun, and then for the last time he looked up, and he shook his fist at her. But as he lowered his eyes, he saw far above the tops of the misty mountains, out of which the stream came, and he thought suddenly it would be cool and shady under those mountains. The sun could not watch me there, and the roots of those mountains must be roots indeed. There must be great secrets buried there, which have not been discovered since the beginning. So he journeyed by night into the highlands, and he found a little cave out of which the dark stream ran, and he wormed his way like a maggot into the heart of the hills, and vanished out of all knowledge. The ring went into the shadows with him, and even the Maker, when his power had begun to grow again, could learn nothing of it. Yeah, he got kicked out by Grandma. Gollum got kicked out by his own grandma. But also, fun fact, I don't know if we mentioned this before or not, but the sun is referred to as her, and the moon is referred to as him. And that has a relation to the sun and the moon, of the sun and the moon in the Silmarillion, I think. So we'll get to that. That's a fun fact. Anyways, so then this is where Gollum realizes that this is Gollum, right? And Frodo saying that I can't believe that Gollum was connected with hobbits, however, so distantly, said Frodo with some heat. What an abominable notion. And it's true all the same, replied Gandalf, about their origins at any rate. I know more than hobbits do themselves, and even Bilbo's story suggests the kinship. They know the riddles. Gandalf's implying that Bilbo and Gollum shared a similar thing. Wait, moon, her, sun, him? No, sun is her, moon is him. Hobbits refer to the sun as her. And I believe, let me see, of the sun and the moon in the Silmarillion, because the sun and the moon are created by two fruits of the two trees, right? And so the sun was created, I can't remember the name of the Valar that carry them. Yeah, the maiden of whom the Valar chose among the Maiar to guide the vessel of the sun was named Arien, and he that steered the island of the moon was Tilion. So yeah, the moon the vessel that is the sun is carried by one of the Valar throughout the skies, right? And it's carried by a Valar, a maiden of the Valar named Arien, and the moon is by a Valar dude whose name is Tilion. And so yeah. I can never remember Arien and Tilion off the top of my head. The sun and the moon always confuse me. But that's what I'm saying is when you're reading through this, when you're reading through Lord of the Rings, you find connections to the Silmarillion. And when we go read the Silmarillion, it will make more sense if you haven't read it before. I know there's a lot of people in here that know a lot about it. I'm just I'm trying to gauge this for some people. I know there's a lot of people that have tried to read the Silmarillion and have struggled with it, and I think that building taking this, relating it to the Silmarillion. When you get to the Silmarillion, you're like, oh yeah, I remember. You know what I mean? Oh yeah. So then you get to this part here. You know, Gandalf's talking about him about Gollum, and he does mention here, unless it could be conquered, unless it could be cured, talking about like the corruption of the ring that had on him. And he says, alas, there's little hope of that, yet no hope. Though he possessed the ring so long, almost as far back as he can remember, for it was long since he had worn it much, because in the black darkness it was seldom needed. Certainly he had never faded. He is thin and tough still, but the thing that was eating up his mind, of course, and the torment had become almost unbearable. And so it's important here because Gandalf is mentioning that he thinks that there's a chance that Smeagol could be cured of the effects that the ring had on him, which is going to play a big point in Frodo's development and the pity that Frodo feels for Gollum, because Gollum is obviously, Frodo sees a lot of himself in Gollum. You know what I mean? I'm trying. Oh no, I'm missing the Silm talk. Why are you missing the Silm talk? We'll get back to it. Don't worry, it's nothing crazy. We're not getting anything too crazy. I like this part too. Frodo, after all you have heard, said Gandalf, he hated it and loved it as he hated and loved himself. Me and Gollum are the same. We're the same in that. I feel so seen right now. Because the Ring of Power looks after itself. As far as I know, Bilbo alone in history has ever gone beyond playing and actually done it. Meaning Bilbo is the alone in history, the only person who gave up the ring. Because it was not Gollum that cast the ring aside. The ring decided it. The ring, you have to remember, the ring is like somewhat sentient. It's like a sentient ring. You know what I mean? Didn't Frodo's parents perish in a water accident? Yeah, they were drowned. They were drowned. Yeah, it helps, you know, give it a good example of Frodo's sympathy towards Smeagol. That only him and Smeagol can really understand, right? Like Sam isn't able to understand the pity that Frodo has for Smeagol because Sam is not a ring bearer, you know? But then you hear, you know, he's talking about how or Bilbo found the ring, and he says, "Just in time to meet Bilbo," said Frodo. "Wouldn't an orc have suited it better?" And Gandalf says, "It is no laughing matter," said Gandalf. "Not for you. It was the strangest event in the whole history of the ring so far. Bilbo's arrival just at that time and putting his hand on it blindly in the dark. There was more than one power at work, Frodo. The ring was trying to get back to its master. It had slipped from Isildur's hand and betrayed him. And then when chance came, it caught poor Deagle and was murdered. And after that, Gollum, and it had devoured him. It could make no further use of him. He was too small and mean, and as long as it stayed with him, he would never leave his deep pool again. So now, when its master was awake once more and sending out his dark thought from Mirkwood, it abandoned Gollum, only to be picked up by the most unlikely person imaginable, Bilbo from the Shire." Is that the most unlikely person imaginable? Because at this point, it's been held by more hobbits than anybody else, right? It was Sauron to Isildur. Okay, so a Maiar, and then Isildur, and then Deagle, Smeagol. Like, just statistically speaking, it's probably going to end up going to another hobbit. And then it goes to Frodo. Like, and then it goes to Sam. Sam carries it for a little bit. Like, hobbits have put their fingers on this ring way more than anybody, any other version. It's really a hobbit ring, right? Is that really the most unlikely creature imaginable? At this point, I don't think so. It tracks. It tracks. It tracks. It tracks. Behind that, there was something else at work beyond any design of the ring maker, meaning Sauron. I can put no plainer than by saying that Bilbo was meant to find the ring, and not by its maker, in which case you were also meant to have it, and that may be an encouraging thought. What if Sauron was a hobbit? Good point, Megan. He could be a hobbit. What if Sauron, well, Sauron's really tall, right? Sauron's really tall. What if Sauron's actually just like 15 hobbits stacked up on each other, like in a cartoon with a trench coat under his suit of armor? It's just a ton of hobbits, right? He's a hobbit mech. Could be. Short King energy, maybe. Iluvatar's plan, TM, trademark. True. All right. We got to keep going. I'm going to run out of time. This is why we're only going to do 2 chapters next week. All right, let's see. I think here comes Gandalf with some sass. Gandalf looked at Frodo and his eyes glinted. I knew much and I have learned much, he answered. But I am not going to give an account of all my doings to you. Okay. The history of Elendil and Isildur and the One Ring is known to all the wise. Your ring is shown to be that one ring by the fire writing alone, apart from any other evidence. And when did you discover that? Asked Frodo, interrupting. Just now in this room, of course. And so here we have, I've come back from many dark journeys and a long search that make the final test. That is the last proof, and all is now only too clear. Making out Gollum's part and fitting it into the gap in history required some thought. I may have started with guesses about Gollum, but I am not guessing now, and I know. I have seen him. The Hunt for Gollum, our newest movie. The Gollum snuff film. Have you seen Gollum? Exclaimed Frodo in amazement. Yes. The obvious thing to do, of course, if one could. I tried long ago, but I have managed it at last. And so he talks about kind of the same thing. He's talking about Smeagol's grandmother being a matriarch and that possessing many elven rings. Because Smeagol told Gandalf that his grandmother had possessed many elven rings, and Gandalf was like, that's absurd. No way. That the murder of Deagle haunted Gollum, and he made up his defense, referring it to his birthday present. And then here you see, I endured him as long as I could, but the truth was desperately important, and in the end I had to be harsh. I put the fear of fire on him and wrung the true story out of him, bit by bit, together with much sniveling and snarling. So, like, if you watch The Hunt for Gollum, is it just going to be like Gandalf torturing Gollum? Is it going to be like, is that it? We need Old Forest? All right, maybe we'll do 3 next week. I don't know. Gandalf would never... He literally just said Gandalf did. He put the fear of fire on him and wrung the story from him. What do you think? He was being nice? Anyways, but then he mentions that Gollum had good friends now. And that is referring to Gollum basically at one point gets out and he travels to Mordor. Right? He's called to Mordor. Yeah, it's gonna be Gandalf and Aragorn just torturing Gollum. You're just gonna watch Gollum get tortured for an hour and a half, and they're gonna be like, "Wasn't that a good movie?" Gollum Tanamo Bay. Oh my god. Obviously, when he went to Mordor, he's able to tell people about Bilbo and hobbits and the Shire because Bilbo told him about it, right? But yeah, he followed Bilbo's trail to Esgaroth, the streets of Dale. He heard Bilbo's name because obviously Bilbo had become somewhat famous, and his travel back to the Shire was not a secret. Why didn't he come to the Shire? Asked Frodo. And said Gandalf, now we come to it. I think Gollum tried to. He set out and came back westward as far as the Great River, but then he turned aside. He was not daunted by the distance, but something else drew him away. So my friends think. Those that hunted him for me, Aragorn. and the Wood Elves. The Wood Elves tracked him first, an easy task for them, and his trail was still fresh. Through Mirkwood and back it led them, though they never caught him, and the wood was full of rumor of him. Dreadful tales, even among beasts and birds. The woodsman said that there was some new terror abroad, a ghost that drank blood. It climbed trees to find nest, crept into holes to find the young, and it slipped through windows to find cradles. That's the creepiest part of Gollum. Sneaking through windows to find cradles. He was tortured 2 times. No, he was tortured for hundreds of years. I mean, if you think about it, like the ring was torturing him the whole time. He really had a miserable life. I got a lot of pity for Gollum. Except maybe not eaten out of cradles, dude. Is that saying he ate babies, or is it just a rumor he ate babies? Anyways. I still trusted the lore of Saruman. That was years ago, and I've paid for it with many dark and dangerous days. The trail was long and cold when I took it up again after Bilbo left here, and my search would have been in vain but for the help that I had from a friend, Aragorn, the greatest traveler and huntsman of this age of the world. Together we sought for Gollum down the whole length of the Wilderland without hope. And so, yeah, Gandalf, or Aragorn's the one that finds Gollum. We'll get more to Aragorn's finding of Gollum later, and he returns with the miserable creature with him. And a heavy silence filled the room. Frodo could hear his heart beating, and even outside everything seemed still. No sound of Sam's shears could now be heard. Again, Sam's prying. He's listening. He's a little eavesdropper. He's dropping that eaves. Hide your babies. Mordor draws all wicked things, and the dark power was bending all its will to gather them there. The ring of the enemy would leave its mark too, and leave him open to the summons, and all folk were whispering then of the new shadow in the south, and its hatred of the west. There were his new fine friends who would help him get his revenge. So yeah, he'd already been, at this point, by the time Aragorn and Gandalf find him, he's already been tortured by Sauron. And, but now his mistress is done. And so the enemy has learned that the one has been found again. He knows where Isildur fell. He knows where Gollum found the ring. He knows that it is a great ring, for it gave long life. He knows that it is not one of the 3, for they've never been lost, and endure no evil. He knows that it is not one of the 7 or the 9, for they are accounted for. And he knows that it is the one, and that he has last heard, I think, of hobbits and the Shire. And so now you see that this is why Sauron is seeking for the Shire, right? And the long unnoticed name of Baggins has become important. Then you have this part too, where Frodo's saying, "What am I to do? What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had the chance. Pity. It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy. Not to strike without need, and he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil and escaped in the end, because he began his ownership of the ring so, with pity." "I am sorry," said Frodo, "but I am frightened, and I do not feel any pity for Gollum." "You have not seen him," Gandalf broke in. "No, and I don't want to. I can't understand you. Do you mean to say that you and the elves have let him live on after all those horrible deeds? Now, at any rate, he's as bad as an orc, and just an enemy, and he deserves death." "Deserve it? I dare say he does. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment, for even the wise cannot see all ends. I have not seen much hope that Gollum can be cured before he dies, but there is a chance of it, and he is bound up in the fate of the ring. My heart tells me that he has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before the end, and when that comes, the pity of Bilbo may rule the fate of many, yours not the least. In any case, we did not kill him. He's very old and very wretched, and the wood elves have held him in prison, and they treat him with as much kindness as they can find in their wise hearts." Kind of cool. Good line. Classic line. When I reread this again, I says, yeah, Aragorn's already getting name dropped. But that doesn't mean Frodo's still not going to know that that's the Aragorn that he's talking about. A part here, which we'll get to later in the Council of Elrond, where he's saying that you can't throw it away, you can't destroy it. Throwing it away was obviously wrong. These rings have a way of being found, and in hands it might have done great evil. Worst of all, it might have fallen into the hands of the enemy. Indeed, it certainly would, for this is the one, and he's exerting all his power to find it or draw it to himself. But, it is what it is. But why not destroy it, as you say should have been done long ago, cried Frodo. What if you had warned me or sent me a message? I would have done away with it. Would you? How would you do that? Have you ever tried? No, but I suppose one could hammer it or melt it. Try. Try now. And Frodo drew the ring out of his pocket again and looked at it, and it now appeared plain and smooth, without mark or device that he could see. The gold looked very fair and pure, and Frodo thought how rich and beautiful was its color. How perfect was its roundness. It was an admirable thing and altogether precious, and when he took it out, he had intended to fling it from him into the very hottest part of the fire. But he found now that he could not do so, not without a great struggle. He weighed the ring in his hand, hesitating and forcing himself to remember all that Gandalf had told him, and then with an effort of will he made a movement as if to cast it away. But he found that he had put it back in his pocket. Kind of interesting. You see here, I never really thought about it, but Frodo can't even throw it into the fire. And then he thinks he's going to be able to throw it into the cracks of doom. Like that is... He already failed. He already failed in chapter 2. Fail's a strong word. Fail's a strong word. If a dragon can melt it, a Balrog could for sure. A Balrog, maybe. I don't think so. No, they didn't have any other option. I'm just pointing it out. It's just interesting. I never really thought about it before, where Frodo can't even throw it into the fire in his house, let alone the Sammath Naur, right? Cast it in the fridge for tomorrow, or put it in my food pocket. Same, Smitty. And Gandalf laughed grimly. You see, already you too, Frodo, cannot easily let it go, nor will to damage it, and I could not make you, except by force, which would break your mind. But as for breaking the ring, force is useless. Even if you took it and struck it with a heavy sledgehammer, it would make no dent in it. It cannot be unmade by your hands or mine. Your small fire would not even melt ordinary gold, but this ring has already passed through it unscathed and even unheated. But there is no smith's forge in the Shire that could change it at all. Not even the anvils of the furnaces of the dwarves could do that. It has been said that dragon fire could melt or consume the rings of power, but there is not now any dragon left on earth in which the old fire is hot enough, nor was there ever any dragon, not even Ancalagon the Black, who could have harmed the One Ring, the ruling ring, for that was made by Sauron himself. And then you have a mention of Ancalagon the Black, right, who is the largest and most badass of all the dragons, which we will get into in the War of Wrath. You'll hear about Ancalagon the Black in the Silmarillion. Cool dragon. It's just crazy that you get these little mentions of the Silmarillion. So that's why when you read the Silmarillion, it becomes so much more rewarding after reading this, because you'll read about Ancalagon the Black, the dragon that Gandalf's talking about right here, and you'll be like, oh wait, I heard about him. I heard about him. Cannot easily let it go, nor will to damage it, and could not make you except by force. What does Gandalf mean by that? I think that because Frodo is in possession of the ring, if he were to force him to destroy it, it would break his brain. Like he would be bricked up. He couldn't do it, right? And there's only one way to find the cracks of doom in the depths of Aradruin, the fire mountain, and cast the ring in there, if you really wish to destroy it or put it beyond the grasp of the enemy for forever. And I just want to make a quick note here. There's memes that go around about Tolkien being really good with names, and then for some reason he calls it Mount Doom, and that's just like a dumb meme from... It's kind of funny, but they really don't call it Mount Doom very often in the book. Mount Doom's kind of a movie name. Here you can see the Cracks of Doom, which is cool, and which is known as the Sammath Naur. In the depths of Aradruin, which is the name of Mount Doom, the Fire Mountain. So it's not even called... They don't even call it Mountain Dew. Yeah, he also called it... I'm saying he called it Aradruin. It has another name. I can't remember. Oh, Amon Amarth. Way cooler names than Mount Doom. I wish they would have used Aradruin in the movies, but whatever. And then Frodo asks Gandalf to take the ring. And no, cries Gandalf, springing to his feet. With that power, I should have the power too great and terrible. And over me, the ring would gain a power still greater and more deadly, because Gandalf knows. His eyes flashed, and his face was lit as by a fire within. Do not tempt me, for I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself. Yet the way of the ring to my heart is by pity. Pity for weakness and the desire to do of strength to do good. Do not tempt me. I dare not take it, not even to keep it safe and unused. The wish to wield it would be too great for my strength, and I shall have such need of it. Great perils lie before me. And so you see all of it. You know what I mean? Ongoing theme, motive of pity is motivation. Yeah, but you know, cracks of doom are the gaps between your seat and your car. True. But what I'm saying is, like, you know, it's cool. This part here is funny too, where they're talking about how, you know, Frodo, he's basically telling Frodo that Frodo's accepting the fact that he's going to have to leave the Shire with the ring and leave Bag End, leave everything and go away. And he says, I should like to save the Shire if I could. Though there have been times when I thought the inhabitants too stupid and dull for words, and I felt that an earthquake or an invasion of dragons might be good for them. But I don't feel like that now. I feel that as long as the Shire lies behind, safe and comfortable, I shall find wandering more bearable. I shall know that somewhere there is a firm foothold, even if my feet cannot stand there again. Frodo's willing to sacrifice everything. Like, at this point, Frodo knows that his journey's not like Bilbo's. He's out. You know what I mean? He's out. Doom feels like a silly name now, but Doom meant something. Yeah. Doom in Lord of the Rings is usually read as fate, right? Or premonition. Like the doom of Mandos is not a doom like a like you're doomed. It's a doom like a premonition kind of thing. It is your doom kind of thing. Usually not a good thing, but you know, it is what it is. And then, you know, Gandalf pulls Samwise Gamgee through the window, pulls him onto the table, tells him, yo, you're going with him. You're going with him. And Sam's excited. Sam wants to go see the elves. He's excited. He bursts into tears. He doesn't want to be turned into anything unnatural. And Frodo tells Sam, if he tells anybody anything that he's heard here, he hopes Gandalf will turn him into a spotted toad and fill the garden full of grass snakes, which is pretty savage, Frodo. Pretty savage. And that is the end of chapter 2. We got one more. Well, one more to talk about, if we're still open to talking about it. Who's Lore? Sam mentioned him, her. Who? Yeah, Sam's a goofy guy. Sam's a goofy guy in the books. Sam is a goofy guy in the books. So that's chapter 2. Any notes on chapter 2? Any notes? What are we thinking? How are we feeling about it? Yeah, thanks for the follow. Ads? Perfect time for ads. Perfect ad break. Perfect time for an ad break, honestly. Is there anything in chapter 2 that anybody wants to know about? Speak now or forever hold your peace. We're moving on. How long are you live today? I probably got another hour. What discussion did I miss? Say Cookie? Ads done? All right. Ads are done. Does anybody have any questions about that chapter before we move on? Anything that needs clearing up? Anything that needs clearing up? Are we good to move on to Three's Company? Because there's some things I want to talk about in Three's Company. I'm probably going to get on a tangent towards the end and get really caught up here. All right, I'm moving on. So you ought to go quickly. You ought to go soon. This is Gandalf as Arthur Morgan. You ought to go quickly. I don't have my Arthur Morgan voice. You ought to go quickly. You ought to go soon, said Gandalf. 2 or 3 weeks had passed and still Frodo made no sign of getting ready. And so at this point, Frodo decides, they're discussing about how Frodo wants to leave in autumn when he feels like he wants to wander, right? He wants to leave after their birthday, his 50th birthday. He feels like 50 is an ominous year. Maybe he's being a little selfish. He's like, I should probably leave quick, but, I really want to spend my birthday here. Anyways, really not much happens here at the beginning of this chapter. You know what I mean? Frodo's asking where he's going to be going, and Gandalf says, don't be absurd. I'm not warning you into leaving an address at the post office, but you are leaving the Shire, and that should not be known until you're far away, and you must go, or at least set out either north, south, west, or east, and the direction should certainly not be known. I have been so taken up with the thoughts of leaving Bag End and saying farewell that I have never really considered the direction, said Frodo. For where am I to go, and by what shall I steer? What is to be my quest? Bilbo went to find treasure, there and back again, but I go to lose one, and not to return, as far as I can see. But you cannot see very far, said Gandalf, and neither can I. It may be your task to find the cracks of doom, but that quest may be for others. I do not know. At any rate, you are not ready for that long road yet. No, indeed, said Frodo, but in the meantime, what course am I to take? Towards danger, but not too rashly, nor too straight, answered the wizard. If you want my advice, make for Rivendell. That journey should not prove too perilous, though the road is less easy than it was, and it will grow worse within the year, as the year fails. Rivendell, said Frodo. Very good. I will go east, and I will make for Rivendell, and I will take Sam to visit the elves, and he will be delighted. He spoke lightly, but his heart was moved suddenly with the desire to see the house of Elrond Half-Elven, and breathe the air of that deep valley where many of the fair folk still dwell in peace. Elrond Half-Elven. We all know why Elrond is the Half-Elven, right? You cannot see very far is comforting. Yeah, it's like, I must start saying that to people that have anxiety. I also love that Frodo is accepting his fate here, where he says, Bilbo went to find a treasure there and back again, but I go to lose one and not return. You don't know why he's half-elven. Okay, so Elrond is half-elven because his parents were, one of them was he's half-elf. He's half-elf, right? His parents are Eärendil the Mariner, and Elwing. Elwing was the daughter of Dior, who is a descendant of Beren and Luthien. Anyways. And so his brother, Elrond has a brother named Elros, who was the first king of Numenor. You know what? I got a whole thing about this when we get to Gildor and Glorian. Don't worry about that. Wait, there it is. All right. We're going to get into Elrond the Half-Elven. We're going to get into it in a little bit. Elros, my beloved. Anyways, so here we go. So they're talking about Frodo knows that he's going to Rivendell. Movie's different. Frodo just wants to go to Bree. Here, he's expecting to leave there. And he's selling Bag End to who? The Sackville Bagginses. And Mary Brandybuck is buying Frodo a house in Crickhollow. Mary helps Frodo find a house in Crickhollow in Bucklebury, the country over there. And so everybody, they think that Frodo is selling his house and he's going to be moving to Crickhollow, which is much different than the movies, right? He doesn't just leave from Bag End to go straight to Bree. He's selling Bag End to Lobelia. He has this whole plan where everybody thinks that he's moving to Crick Hollow, which is kind of near where he grew up. And so Gandalf stayed in the Shire for another 2 months, and one evening at the end of June, soon after Frodo's plan had been finally arranged, he announced that he was going off again the next morning. Only for a short while, I hope, he said, but I'm going down beyond the southern borders to get some news, if I can. I've been idle longer than I should, and he spoke lightly, but it seemed to Frodo that he looked rather worried. Has anything happened, he asked. Well, no, but I've heard something that has made me anxious and needs looking into. If I think it necessary, after all, for you to get off at once, I shall come back immediately, or at least send word. In the meantime, stick with your plan, but be more careful than ever, especially of the ring. Let me impress on you once more, don't use it. And he went off at dawn. I may be back any day, he said. At the very latest, I shall come back for the farewell party. I think that after all, you'll need my company on the road. And so Frodo, again, he's selling his house. He's selling Bag End to the Sackville Bagginses. He's moving to Crick Hollow in Buckland. Merry set up the house for him to buy. Gandalf's leaving, but Gandalf is saying he's going to come back. He's saying he's come back before Frodo leaves because he wants to accompany Frodo on the road. Let's see. September was passing, and there was still no news of Gandalf. The birthday and the removal drew nearer, and still he did not come or send word. Bag End began to be busy. Some of Frodo's friends came to stay and help him with the packing. There was Fredegar Bolger, Fatty Bolger, the best, and Falco Boffin, also pretty sick dude. And of course his special friends, Pippin, Took, and Merry Brandybuck. And between them, they turned the whole place upside down. On September 20th, 2 covered carts were laden off to Buckland, conveying the furniture and goods that Frodo had not sold to his new home by the way of the Brandywine Bridge. And the next day, Frodo became really anxious and kept a constant lookout for Gandalf. Thursday, his birthday morning dawned as fair and as clear as it had long ago for Bilbo's great party. Still Gandalf did not appear. In the evening, Frodo gave his farewell feast, and it was quite small, just a dinner for himself and his 4 helpers. But he was troubled and felt no mood for it. The thought that he would so soon have to part with his young friends weighed on his heart, and he wondered how he would break it to them. So, and then Frodo says, whatever happens to the rest of my stuff when the Sackville Bagginses get their claws on it, at any rate, I found a good home for this, Frodo said as he drained his glass, and it was the last drop of Old Wynyard. Yeah, they're drinking all the wine before the Sackville Bagginses take over. Hell yeah. Petty King, I love it. All right, the next morning, they were busy packing another cart with the remainder of the luggage, and Merry took charge of this and drove off with Fatty Bolger, Fredegar Bolger. Someone must get there and warm the house before you arrive, said Merry, and we'll see you later, and the day after tomorrow if you don't go to sleep on the way. Frodo was restless and anxious, listening in vain for the sound of Gandalf, and he decided to wait until nightfall. After that, if Gandalf wanted him urgently, he would go to Crick Hollow and might even get there first, for Frodo was going on foot. His plan, for pleasure and a last look at the Shire as much as any other reason, was to walk from Hobbiton to Bucklebury Ferry, taking it fairly easy. After lunch, the Sackville Bagginses show up. Lobelia and her sandy-haired son Lotho turned up, much to Frodo's annoyance. Ours at last, said Lobelia as she stepped inside. It was not polite, and not strictly true, for the sale of Bag End did not take effect until midnight. But Lobelia can perhaps be forgiven. She had been obliged to wait about 77 years longer for Bag End than she'd once hoped, and she was now 100 years old. Anyways, she'd come to see that nothing she had paid for had been carried off, and she wanted the keys. It took a long while to satisfy her, as she had brought a complete inventory with her and went right through it. In the end, she departed with Lotho and the spare key and the promise that the other key would be left at the Gamgees in Bagshot Row. She snorted and showed painfully that she thought the Gamgees capable of plundering the whole during the night. Frodo did not offer her any tea. Yeah, it makes me anxious, too, when he's ready to leave. But, I mean, Gandalf knew the plan, right? Gandalf knew the plan of when he was supposed to leave. And Gandalf thought it was a good idea, too. So, like, I think it makes sense. Frodo is a badass, yeah. No tea. He's got a little bit more sass left too. He took his own tea with Pippin and Sam Gamgee in the kitchen. It had been officially announced that Sam was coming to Buckland to do for Mr. Frodo and look after his bit of garden. An arrangement that was approved by the gaffer, although it didn't console him for the prospect of having Lobelia as a neighbor. Our last meal at Bag End, said Frodo, pushing back his chair. They left the washing up for Lobelia. Pippin and Sam strapped up their packs and piled them in the porch, and Pippin went out for a last stroll in the garden, and Sam disappeared. They just left all the dirty dishes. They left all the dirty dishes for Lobelia. Sass. Sass. And then we have a Nazgul. We have a ring wraith meeting with the gaffer. The sky was clear and the stars were growing bright, and it's going to be a fine night, he said aloud. And that's good for a beginning. I feel like walking. I can't bear any more hanging about. I'm going to start, and Gandalf must follow me. He turned to go back and then stopped, for he heard voices just around the corner by the end of Bagshot Row, and one voice was certainly the old gaffer's, and the other was strange and somehow unpleasant. He could not make out what it said, but he heard the gaffer's answers, which were rather shrill, and the old man seemed put out. No, Mr. Baggins has gone away. Went this morning. And my Sam went with him. Anyway, all his stuff went. Yes, sold out and gone, I tell ye. Why? Why's none of my business or yours? Where to? That ain't no secret. He's moved to Buckleberry or some such place way down yonder. Yes, it is a tidy way. I've never been so far myself. The queer folks down in Buckland. And no, I can't give no message. Good night to you. There's the gaffer. We love the gaffer. Big gaff gang. Yeah, big gaff gang. Way down yonder on that Chattahoochee. They went down to Chattahoochee. Chattahoochee's actually the Brandywine, by the way. In case you didn't know that. Oh yeah, no, I can't wait to talk about Faramir. Trust me, we'll have a whole day on Faramir. We'll have a Faramir special Faramir stream. Yeah, Ham Gamgee, the goat. But that was a Nazgul, right? And so Frodo's like, that's weird. And then Frodo takes off, right? And I love this part too. Pippin was sitting on his pack on the porch. Sam wasn't there. Frodo stepped inside the dark door. Sam, he called. Sam, it's time. Coming, sir, came the answer from far within, followed soon by Sam himself, wiping his mouth. He had been saying farewell to the beer barrel in the cellar. Sam's just down there in the cellar getting turned. He's getting turned up. I love it. All aboard. And they left. His name is Hamwise. I always picture him doing kickstands too, just getting down there, just sucking down the beer. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, Sam. We love you. So they go off taking off in the night, right? They leave. There was a Nazgul at the door. Creepy. But they go off walking through the night. Honestly, the next good amount of this is pretty much just like them talking about how beautiful the Shire is. Like it's a love letter. It's a love letter to like the English countryside, I think, you know. I don't really see anything too crazy here. They're on the road to Woodhall. We're gonna get to Woodhall though. I do love this part though. They stop to make camp. Triple H. They stop to make camp. I love this part of the book so much. They stop for camp in the heart of the Shire. They're not worried. They're happy. And they curled up in their blankets and were soon fast asleep. They set no watch. Even Frodo feared no danger yet, for they were still in the heart of the Shire. A few creatures came and looked at them when the fire had died away. And a fox, passing through the wood on business of his own, stopped several minutes and sniffed. Hobbits, he thought. Well, what next? I've heard of strange doings in this land, but I've seldom heard of a hobbit sleeping out of doors under a tree. 3 of them. There's something mighty queer behind this, and he was right, but he never found out any more about it. I just love the curious fox. We love the fox. I don't know why. That just like that little moment of like this sentient fox and what the fox is thinking. Just like, what are these hobbits doing out here? you know? Yeah, they just like one random POV from a fox. I think it's funny. I really want to go to the Shire one of these days. Go hit up Hobbiton. Was it cool, Stud Muffin? Yeah, join my Discord if y'all want. If anybody's not in the Discord. Anyways, the day comes on. Frodo's talking about water. Frodo's telling everybody I don't keep water in my pockets because he's a sassy king and kind of privileged, and he's a little nepo baby. They keep walking. They keep walking through the woods. They're asking about elves. Blah, blah, blah. I do like this part, though. They're walking. I don't know, said Frodo. It came to me then. He sings a little walk-in song or whatever, as if I was making it up, but I may have heard it long ago. Certainly it reminds me very much of Bilbo in the last years before he went away. He used to often say there was only one road, and it was like a great river, and its springs were at every doorstep, and every path was its tributary. It's dangerous business, Frodo, going out your door, he used to say. You step into the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. Do you realize that this is the very path that goes through Mirkwood? And if you let it, it might take you to the Lonely Mountain, or even further, into worse places. He used to say that on the path outside the front door at Bag Inn, especially after he'd been out for a long walk. Makes me want to take a long walk, you know what I mean? It's a cool way to think about it. You know, if you think about it, the path outside your front door goes anywhere, right? That's neat. It's a beautiful way of writing it. I think it's neat. Anyways, this is where the chapter gets good. Sun starts going down. They're walking. I can hear a pony or a horse coming along the road behind, said Sam, and they looked back, but the turn of the road prevented them from seeing far. I wonder if that's Gandalf coming after us, said Frodo, but even as he said it, he had a feeling that it was not so, and a sudden desire to hide from the view of the rider came over him. It may not matter much, he said apologetically, but I'd rather not be seen on the road by anyone. I'm sick of my doings being noticed and discussed, and if it is Gandalf, he added as an afterthought, we can give him a little surprise to pay him back for being so late. Let's get out of sight. The other two ran quickly to the left and down into the hollow far from the road, and they lay flat. Frodo hesitated for a second. Curiosity or some other feeling was struggling with his desire to hide. The sound of hooves drew nearer, and just in time he threw himself down in a patch of long grass behind a tree that overshadowed the road, and he lifted his head and peered cautiously above one of the great roots. Round the corner came a black horse, no hobbit pony, but a full-sized horse, and on it sat a large man who seemed to crouch in the saddle, wrapped in a great black cloak and hood, so only his boots in the high stirrups showed below, and his face was shadowed and invisible. When it reached the tree line, it was level with Frodo, and the horse stopped. The riding figure sat quite still, with its head bowed as if listening, and from inside the hood came a noise of someone sniffing to catch an elusive scent, and the head turned from side to side of the road. A sudden, unreasoning fear of discovery laid hold of Frodo, and he thought of the ring. He hardly dared to breathe, and yet his desire to get it out of his pocket became so strong that he began to slowly move his hand. He felt that he only had to slip it on, and then he would be safe. The advice of Gandalf seemed absurd. Bilbo had used the ring, and I'm still in the Shire, he thought, as his hand touched the chain on which it hung, and at that moment the rider sat up and shook the reins. The horse stepped forward, walking slowly at first, and then breaking into a quick trot. I think that the portrayal of the Nazgul in this chapter and in this part of the book is like way more creepy, personally. Frodo crawled to the edge of the road and watched the rider until he dwindled into the distance. He couldn't be sure, but it seemed to him that suddenly, before it passed out of sight, the horse turned aside and went into the trees on the right. He's smelling. I like the sniffing for him. The sniffing is like, it's weird. And then Sam decides to say that he knows where he comes from. It's Hobbiton. That here this black rider comes unless there's more than one, and I know where he's going to. I've only just remembered, sir. It was like this. When I got back to our hole yesterday evening with the key, my daddy says to me, "Hello, Sam." He says, "I thought you were away with Mr. Frodo this morning. There's been a strange customer asking for Mr. Baggins at Bag End, and he's only just gone. I sent him to the Buckleberry Ferry. Not that I liked the sound of him. He seemed mighty put out when I told him Mr. Baggins had left his old home for good. Hissed at me, he did. Gave me quite a shitter. What sort of fellow was he?" I says I to the gaffer. "I don't know," says he, "but he wasn't a hobbit. He was tall and black-like and swooped over me, and I reckon he was one of them big folk from foreign parts, and he spoke funny." Anyways, sorry for the southern accent there. So basically, Frodo and them hobbits. That's my gaffer voice. Hooey, Hamwise Gamgee. Oklahoma gaffer. It's true. It's true. Anyways, they kept walking through the night after that. And we keep walking, stay off the road or whatever, trying to get to Woodhall. And then they hear hooves again. I think I hear hooves again. They stopped suddenly and stood as silent as tree shadows, listening as there was a sound of hoofs in the lane, some way behind, but coming slow and clear down the path. Clear down the wind, sorry. Quickly and quietly, they slipped off the path and ran deeper into the shade of the oak trees. "Don't let us go too far," said Frodo. "I don't want to be seen, but I want to see if it's another Black Rider." "Very well," said Pippin, "but don't forget the sniffing." The hoofs drew nearer. They had no time to waste to find any hiding place better than the general darkness under the trees. Sam and Pippin crouched behind a large tree bole while Frodo crept back a few yards towards the lane. It showed gray and pale and a line of fading light through the wood, and above it the stars were thick and dim in the sky, but there was no moon. The sound of hooves stopped. As Frodo watched, he saw something dark pass across the lighter space between two trees and then halt. It looked like the black shade of a horse led by a smaller black shadow. The black shadow stood close to the point where they'd left the path, and it swayed from side to side. Frodo heard the sound of sniffing. The shadow bent to the ground and began to crawl towards him. I like this image of the Nazgul here. I like seeing it swaying side to side, like kind of unnatural movements, and then crawling, like getting down. I picture it on like all fours, just like crawling like a spider, just like creepy on the ground. That's how I picture it in my head. And it's like real creepy. You know what I mean? Real creepy. I mean, the sniffing is, like the ring girl. Yeah, just like the ring girl. Like I picture like a Nazgul crawling like the ring girl, like with like really weird movements. And I think that would be really neat. I think it'd be really neat to see. Anyways, then they see elves. Once more the desire to slip on the ring came over Frodo, but this time it was stronger than before. So strong that almost before he realized what he was doing, his hand was groping in his pocket. But at that moment, there came a sound like mingled song and laughter. Clear voices rose and fell in the starlit air. The black shadow straightened up and retreated, and it climbed into the shadowy horse and seemed to vanish across the lane into the darkness on the other side, and Frodo breathed again. "Elves!" exclaimed Sam in a hoarse whisper. "Elves!" He would have burst out of the tree and dashed off towards the voices if they'd not pulled him back. And so then here they see the elves in the Shire, but unlike the movies, they have a long encounter with the elves. And I think it's the best. "They're coming this way," said Frodo. "We only have to wait." And the others knew nothing, yet the sound blending with the melody seemed to shape itself into their thought and words, which they thought only partially understood. This was the song as Frodo heard it. Snow White, O lady clear, O queen beyond the western seas, O light to us that wander here amid the world of woven trees. Gilthoniel, O Elbereth, Clear are the eyes and bright are thy breath. Snow white, we sing to thee in a far land beyond the sea. O stars that in sunless year with shining hand by her woven, by her were sown in windy fields now bright and clear. We see your silver blossom blown. O Elbereth Gilthoniel, we still remember, we who dwell in this far land beneath the trees, thy starlight on western seas. The song ended. These are high elves. They spoke the name of Elbereth, said Frodo in amazement. Few of the fairest folk are ever seen in the Shire. Not many now remain in Middle-earth, east of the Great Sea. This is indeed a strange chance. And we got to talk about this. Elbereth. We got to talk about Elbereth, right? We gots to. Who are Elbereth and Gilthoniel? I appreciate that question, Yoshi, because Elbereth and Gilthoniel, Elbereth are the same person. Elbereth is Varda. So, this is where I'm going to get caught on a tangent. Both names for Varda, Queen of the Valar. Correct. That is right. The Valar are Maiar. Maiar. Okay. Right. Maiar are godly beings, right? There's the greater of the Maiar, which are known as Valar, and there's lesser of them. Well, no, they're Ainur. Sorry, there's Valar and Maiar. Valar are the greaters, Maiar are the lessers. Gandalf is a Maiar. Sauron is a Maiar. The Valar would be like Morgoth or Varda or Ulmo, Manwë. Anyways, Elbereth Gilthoniel is the queen of the Valar. She's think of like the Greek pantheon kind of thing. This isn't spoilers. We're talking about it. And Varda is the queen of the Valar. And Varda, before she created the stars, right? Varda created she created the stars. Like, she kindled the stars. Her name is Star Kindler, right? And Eldar, the Eldar, which is what they're called. The elves are called the Eldar, which actually translates to the people of the stars, because the elves, when the elves first awoke in Middle-earth at the Cuiviénen, there was no sun, there was no moon, and the only light that they knew was the light of the stars. And so the Eldar are the people of the stars, meaning the elves, and they love the stars, and they sing to Elbereth Gilthoniel Varda, who is the kindler of the stars. She's the god that created the stars, basically. And so you'll see Elbereth and Gilthoniel a lot throughout the books, and Elbereth is a mention to the god that created the stars. I hope that clears it up, Yoshi. Yeah, no, wizards are Maiar too. Yeah, Gandalf's a Maiar. Saruman is a Maiar. Sauron is a Maiar. And then within there's different factions of the elves, which we'll get into in the Silmarillion, or maybe we'll get into it later. But there's the Avari, and then all of them are known as the Quindi, which are people that speak. But Maiar is a race, kind of JC Dizzy. Maiar is like the Maiar are like, they're like minor gods. I think the best way to explain Maiar would be like, I think the Greek pantheon is a good example. Like, think of like the lesser of the Greek pantheon of gods. Those would kind of be the Maiar, and like Zeus and like the big ones would be like the Valar. Kind of like spirits, right? Not really demigods though. It's but kind of yeah. You could consider like the Maiar would be like more on the demigod level in the Greek pantheon, and the Valar would be like the more things. Yeah. There's not really a 1-to-1, but yeah, I think it's a decent comparison. Yeah, the Maiar are not as powerful as the Valar. No, definitely not. Yo, thanks, Vibrant Silences, for the sub. For the 6 months, too. Yeah, they're not as powerful as Valar. Like Gandalf can't create stars, right? A Balrog is a Maiar, and that's why when Gandalf encounters the Balrog, he says, "Oh, this is a foe beyond any of you." Like he knows that it's up to him. He's the only one that has a possibility, like even a chance, to kind of stand against the Balrog. How does one become a Maiar? You can't become a Maiar. JC Dizzy. So Eru Iluvatar. Think about Eru Iluvatar. He's the creator. He's the number one god of the thing, and he created everything. And he created what are called Ainur, and within the Ainur, some of them became Maiar, some of them became Valar. So you can't really become one. They just always were one. So Gandalf is as a Maiar has existed since the beginning of time, essentially. His form as Gandalf has not. He had different forms before when we get to the Silmarillion. He used to be a Loren, and he didn't become Gandalf until he journeyed to Middle Earth at the end or the beginning of the Third Age. Yes, Maiar can be corrupted or fall to evil. Like Morgoth was a Valar. Morgoth was a Valar who became evil, and Morgoth's, or corrupted is a better term. But Morgoth corrupted some of the Maiar to serve him. Most notably Sauron. Sauron was Morgoth's chief lieutenant. He also recruited the Balrogs as his lieutenants, and that is why Sauron doesn't control the Balrogs, because the Balrogs served Morgoth. They do not serve Sauron. I don't think Sauron could enlist a Balrog into his service. I don't think he possesses that capability, personally. That's my personal feeling. Anyways, we're gonna move on. But that's a really cool little, like, when you get to Elbereth. We'll get to Elbereth again later in the book. We'll see it a bunch, actually. And so we'll talk more about Florida. That's why we're doing this, JC Dizzy. We're doing this to answer questions. Yeah, I could too, Megan. Yeah, for sure. Anyway, so they hear the elves singing their songs, and eventually the elves see the hobbits, and he says, "Hail, Frodo," he cried, "you are brought late, or perhaps you are lost." And then he called aloud to others, and all the company stopped as gathered around. "And this is indeed wonderful," they said. "3 hobbits in the wood at night. We have not seen such a thing since Bilbo went away. What is the meaning of it?" "The meaning of it, fair people," said Frodo, "is simply that we seem to be going the same way as you, and I like walking under the stars, but I would welcome your company." "But we have no need of other company, and hobbits are so dull," they laughed. "And how do you know that we are going the same way as you? For you don't know whither we are going." "And how do you know my name?" asked Frodo in return. "We know many things," they said, "and we've seen you often before with Bilbo, though you may not have seen us." "And who are you, and who is your lord?" asked Frodo. "I am Gildor," answered their leader, the elf who had first hailed him, "Gildor Inglorian of the house of Finrod. We are exiles, and most of our kindred have long ago departed, and we too are now tarrying here a while ere we return over the great sea." Here we go. I'm going to confuse the shit out of everybody. Finrod. So the elf that they're talking to right here is Gildor Inglorian of the House of Finrod. What is the House of Finrod, you might wonder? This is going to be important, and this is a good reference point for when we get to the Silmarillion in the future. Finrod Felagund is the son of Finarfin. Finarfin, I should get a whiteboard. Finarfin is the son of Finwë. He's one of the sons of Finwë. Finwë is one of the first elves to awake.
He's an elf of the Noldor. So Finwë has a few sons, Feanor, Fingolfin, Finrod, or Finarfin, whatever. Finarfin, Fingolfin. It doesn't matter. And Feanor. We'll get to it. Finrod is the son of Finarfin. Who else is the son of Finarfin? You might be wondering. You might be wondering who else is the son of Finarfin? That's right. Galadriel. Right? Galadriel is the brother of Finrod. As well as Angrod and Agnor. But whatever, that doesn't matter. We don't care about them right now. What we care about is Finrod Felagund, Galadriel's brother. Cousin of Turgon. Yeah, Galadriel's Finrod's sister. Right? Am I wrong? Oh, I called her a brother? Sorry. I meant to say Finrod, who Gildor and Glorian is a part of the house of, is Galadriel's brother. Now, Finrod has a cool story, and we're going to do a quick little lowdown on the story of Finrod Felagund. Galadriel's brother, a.k.a. Galadriel's brother. This is Galadriel's brother we're talking about. He left Valinor with the host of the Noldor after Feanor's. He was in the second host or the third host or something. I don't remember which host Finrod was in. So he did not take place in the kinslaying at Alqualandi. He walked over the Helcaraxe, the land of the grinding ice, which was an ice bridge connecting Aman and Middle-earth. And with him, he carried the Ring of Barahir. The Ring of Barahir is very important. I think it's important. Anyways, we'll get to the ring in a little bit. Sorry, this is so hard to talk about. It's so hard to talk about. Yeah, chasing down Melkor and Ungoliant, essentially. Yeah, Lurky, yeah. And there, he built a stronghold known as Minas Tirith. A different Minas Tirith than the Minas Tirith that we know in the movies, but it's Minas Tirith, which just means what? Tower of the Guard. Minas Tirith is a translation that means the Tower of the Guard. And so he made a tower called Minas Tirith. And then eventually he goes with Galadriel and he meets with Thingol, Elu Thingol of Doriath. After that, he makes the hidden kingdom of Nargothrond. It's not super hidden, but whatever, with dwarves. And the dwarves that help him create Nargothrond make the Nauglamir for him. The Nauglamir eventually is going to make its way to King Thingol. Elu Thingol is going to put a Silmaril in the Nauglamir. That's a whole nother... Oh, man. See this? You got to get to the Silmarillion for all this. You need the Silmarillion for all this. Anyways... So he establishes his kingdom in Nargothrond, and eventually the tower that he lives in, which is Minas Tirith, is captured by Sauron, right? And it becomes a tower of the werewolves. I can't remember the name of it. What's the name of it? Tali Glarath or something? So he establishes his kingdom in Nargothrond, of Nargothrond, in Beleriand. But during I think it's the Dagor Bragollach. Is it the Dagor Bragollach? We're going to do a whole series on the Silmarillion. I just want to talk about Finrod for a second. At the Dagor Bragollach, he is rescued by a man, a human man named Barahir. And he gifts Barahir his ring, the Ring of Barahir. And the Ring of Barahir gets taken by Barahir. Barahir gets killed by a bunch of orcs or whatever. And his son is Beren. Barahir's son is Beren, who avenges his father and takes the hand and whatever. He gets the ring. He gets the Ring of Barahir that was given to him by Finrod. And the Ring of Barahir eventually is going to get passed down, and Aragorn is wearing this exact ring that was from Finrod, Galadriel's brother, made in Valinor, that goes to Finrod, that goes to Barahir, that goes to Beren, that goes to probably Dior, that goes to Elwing, that eventually makes its way to Elros, that eventually makes its way to Numenor through the lines of the men of Numenor, and eventually Aragorn is wearing this ring of Barahir. He's wearing this ring in the movies, and so you'll see Aragorn with the ring with the two serpents around like a green jewel, and that is the ring of Barahir in the movies, which is really cool. That's cool. And his kingdom of Nargothrond, eventually Beren, on his quest to obtain the Silmaril, Finrod goes with him. And when Finrod goes with Beren on his quest to obtain the Silmaril, they get captured by Sauron and sent into the dungeons of the tower, Minas Tirith, which is called like Tower Gworath or whatever. The towers of the werewolves. And Sauron has their whole company killed one by one by werewolves, essentially. But before he dies, Finrod dies in these dungeons, and he kills a werewolf with his bare hands and his teeth. He rips it apart with his teeth because he's a bad motherfucker. Finrod is. And before he does that, he has a whole rap battle. He does a whole rap battle with Sauron. They strive against each other in songs of power, which is sick. And what happens to his kingdom of Nargothrond, you might wonder? Turin happens to it, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to build a bridge. We should build a bridge at your hidden cool kingdom of caves. We're going to build a bridge. Basically puts up a big old welcome mat, and it gets sacked by Glaurung, a dragon. Fucking Turin comes in with his great ideas all the time. All the time. But what's really cool about the Ring of Barahir that goes from Beren through Numenor eventually, this is when we get back to Elrond half Elven, because Elrond's brother is Elros. Elros has this ring that gets passed down through that. And the reason Elrond is the half Elven is because his brother he chose to be of Elven kindred, and his brother chose to be a mortal man and founded the island kingdom of Numenor, of which Aragorn is a descendant. And the whole point of this story is for me to tell you that Aragorn and Arwen are cousins. Cousins. 8,000 times removed, but no, oh God. They're cousins. Separated by like several thousands and thousands of years. So it's like, you know. Now you got to read their lines in a southern voice too. I choose immortal life, Aragorn. I love you. I don't care what my uncle says. I choose immortal life. He's a ranger. You're a ranger. So she's quarter, not elf, right? Who? Arwen? No, I think Arwen is full elf. I don't know. It gets confusing even to me. Because both of Arwen's parents are full elf. Like I guess she'd be 3/4 elf if you really wanted to do it like that, right? Because if Elrond's half elven, he's half. But Celebrian,
Also, if you didn't know this, Elrond marries Galadriel's daughter. Celebrian is full elf, so she's 3/4 elf. Yeah. That ain't no mere ranger. You ain't no mere ranger, Aragorn. You're my cousin. You're my cousin. Anyway, so that's what gets me really excited about this part here when he says that he's Gildor Inglorian of the House of Finrod. It gets me excited because I get to think about Finrod Felagund. And this is why I'm so excited to get through these books so that we can get to this one, because this one has all the juicy stuff in it. So anyways, let's get back to the book. Gildor Inglorian. Gildor Inglorian, by the way, is not related to Finrod, but he's of the House of Finrod, so he's just like a homie, I guess. I don't know. Finrod's long since dead, but at this point. Yeah, there's Idril and Tuor. Oh yeah, no, it gets super complicated. I get complicated. I get confused. I get confused when I'm reading it. I'm like, right. But we're gonna work through it together. That's the. He's like a bannerman of Finrod, you could say, but Finrod is R.I.P. long since vanquished. I mean, I guess he probably reincarnated in Valinor at this point, just chilling. But yeah, big 07s for Finrod for sure. Anyways, so the elves are like, what are you guys doing? They're all being jolly and happy and just chilling. And they say, Frodo, what are you doing? For we see there is some shadow of fear upon you. And he says, oh, wise people, interrupted Pippin eagerly. Tell us about the Black Riders. And Black Riders, they say in low voices. Why do you ask us of Black Riders? Because 2 Black Riders have overtaken us today, or one has done so twice, said Pippin, only a little while ago. And the elves did not answer at once, but spoke together softly in their own tongue. And at length Gildor turned to the hobbits. We will not speak of this here, he said. We would think you'd best come with us now. It is not our custom, but for this time we will take you on our road, and you shall lodge with us tonight, if you will. O fair folk, this is good fortune beyond my hope, said Pippin. Sam was speechless. Thank you indeed, Gildor Inglorian, said Frodo, bowing. Elm Sila lumen omentielvo. A star shines upon the hour of our meeting, he added in the high elven speech. So they talk about it, and they go with the elves to Woodhall. And there, they do some chilling. You know what I mean? Away high in the east swung Rimirath, the netted stars, and slowly above the mists red Borgil rose, glowing like a jewel of fire. And then by some shift of airs, all the mist was drawn away like a veil, and there leaned up, as he climbed over the rim of the world, the swordsman of the sky, Minelvagor, with his shining belt. The elves all burst into song. Suddenly, under the trees, a fire sprang up with a red light. And so the hobbits are chilling with the elves at Woodhall, and all that. And then they sat and they talked, and here they sit, talk, do merry stuff, chilling with the elves. But this is a good part here. I'm going to read this. They spoke of many things, old and new, and Frodo questioned Gildor about many happenings in the wide world outside the Shire. The tidings were mostly sad and ominous, of gathering darkness and the wars of men and the flight of the elves, and at last Frodo asked the question that was nearest to his heart. Tell me, Gildor, have you ever seen Bilbo since he left us? And Gildor smiled. Yes, he answered, twice. He said farewell to us on this very spot. But I saw him once again, far from here, and he would say no more about Bilbo, and Frodo fell silent. You don't ask me or tell me much that concerns yourself, Frodo, said Gildor, but I already know a little, and I can read more in your face and the thought behind your questions. You're leaving the Shire, and yet you doubt that you will find what you seek or accomplish what you intend, or that you will ever return. Is that not so? I'm going to read this whole page. I'm going to read the rest of the chapter. Buckle in. Buckle in. It is, said Frodo, but I thought my going was a secret known only to Gandalf and my faithful Sam. He looked down at Sam, who was snoring gently. The secret will not reach the enemy from us, said Gildor. The enemy, said Frodo. Then you know why I am leaving the Shire. I do not know for what reason the enemy is pursuing you, answered Gildor, but I perceive that he is strange indeed, though that it seems to me, and I warn you now that peril is now both before you and behind you, and upon either side. You mean the Black Riders? I feared that they were servants of the enemy. What are the Black Riders? Has Gandalf told you nothing? Nothing about such creatures? Then I think it is not for me to say more, lest terror should keep you from your journey, for it seems to me that you have set out only just in time, if indeed you are in time. You must now make haste, and neither stay nor turn back, for the Shire is no longer any protection to you. I cannot imagine what information could be more terrifying than your hints and warnings, exclaimed Frodo. I knew that danger lay ahead, of course, but I did not expect to meet in our own Shire. Can a hobbit not walk from the water to the river in peace? But it is not your own Shire, said Gildor. Others dwelt here before hobbits were, and others will dwell here again when hobbits are no more. The wide world is all about you. You can fence yourselves in, but you cannot forever fence it out. I know, and yet it has always seemed so safe and familiar. What can I do now? My plan was to leave the Shire secretly and make my way to Rivendell, but now my footsteps are dodged before I even get to Buckland. I think you should follow the plan, said Gildor. I do not think that the road will prove too hard for your courage, but if you desire clearer counsel, you should ask Gandalf. I do not know the reason for your flight, and therefore I do not know by what means your pursuers will assail you. These things Gandalf must know. I suppose that you will see him before you leave the Shire? I hope so, but that's another thing that makes me anxious. I've been expecting Gandalf for many days. He was to have come to Hobbiton at the latest 2 nights ago, but he's never appeared, and now I'm wondering what can have happened. Should I wait for him? And Gildor was silent for a moment. I do not like this news, he said at last, that Gandalf should be late. It does not bode well, but it is said, do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger, and the choice is yours, to go or wait. And it is also said, answered Frodo, go not to the elves for counsel, for they will say both no and yes. Frodo over there with the sass. Frodo up there with the sass. Is it indeed, laughed Gildor. Elves seldom give unguarded advice, for advice is a dangerous gift, even from the wise to the wise, and all courses may run ill. But what would you? You've not told me all concerning yourself, and how then should I choose to better thank you? But if you demand advice, I will for friendship's sake give it. I think you should now go at once without delay, and if Gandalf does not come before you set out, then I also advise this. Do not go alone. Take such friends as are trusty and willing. Now you should be grateful, for I do not give this counsel gladly. The elves have their own labors and their own sorrows, and they are little concerned with the ways of hobbits or of any other creatures upon earth. Our paths cross there seldom by chance or purpose. In this meeting there may be more than one chance, but the purpose is not clear to me, and I fear to say too much. I'm deeply grateful, said Frodo, but I wish you would tell me plainly what the Black Riders are. If I take your advice, I may not see Gandalf for a long while, and I ought to know what is the danger that pursues me. Yo, thanks, Gish. I'm deeply grateful, said Frodo, but I wish you would tell me plainly what the Black Riders are. If I take your advice, I may not see Gandalf for a long while, and I ought to know what it is, the danger that pursues me. Is it not enough to know that they are servants of the enemy, answered Gildor. Flee them. Speak no words to them. They are deadly. Ask no more of me. But my heart forebodes that ere all is ended, you, Frodo, son of Drogo, will know more of these things than Gildor and Glorian. May Elbereth protect you. Elbereth mentioned again, Varda. But where shall I find the courage? Asked Frodo. That is what I chiefly need. Courage is found in unlikely places, said Gildor. Be of good hope. Sleep now, and in the morning we shall be gone. But we shall send our messages through the lands. The wandering company shall know of your journey, and those that have power for good shall be on the watch. I name you Elf-friend, and may the star shine upon the end of your road. Seldom have we had such delight in strangers, and it is fair to hear such words of the ancient speech from the lips of other wanderers in the world. Frodo felt sleep coming upon him, even as Gildor finished speaking. I will sleep now, he said, and the elf led him to a bower beside Pippin, and he threw himself upon a bed, and fell at once into a dreamless slumber. And there we see another dreamless slumber. Another one. And that is the end of chapter 3. That's it. Yeah, it totally does. It totally does, Vibrant Silence. That's a good point. I never thought about that either until just now either, until you said that. Did the elves help him sleep? I think the comfort of the elves did. Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's how I read it. You know what I mean? He's around a bunch of high elves and stuff. So like, I don't know. Maybe. Shortcut to mushrooms next. Let's see. Let me look for what you guys want to do with this next week. What are we thinking? 2 or 3 chapters would be feasible. Yeah. You think 2 or 3, or are we going to do 120 pages? That'd be 40 something pages in this book. So that would be Shortcut to Mushrooms for sure. Conspiracy Unmasked. I feel like 2's good. Maybe because we can do Old Forest, and then I feel like Old Forest and let me see. Old Forest. Because I feel like Old Forest, House of Tom Bombadil, and Fog on the Barrow Downs, that's a solid week right there. I feel like that's a solid thing to be kept together. Old Forest and Tom need to be their own day, probably. Yeah, but what about Fog on the Barrow Downs, right? Like, that's 3 chapters for a full Tom Bombadil stream. Of a full Tom Bombadil stream. I think that makes the most sense. So we do 2 chapters next week, and then the week after next week is Tom Bombadil week. Doesn't that make sense? So we'll do the next 2 chapters. Any chance these vids could go on YouTube? Yeah, I'm gonna upload this to YouTube for sure. I think it makes the most sense. So yeah, next week we're gonna do Shortcut to Mushrooms and A Conspiracy Unmasked. 2 chapters next week. Deal? I'll get in the flow better of how to do book clubby stuff for sure. And for those of you that don't pop in too often or whatever, I might be on later tonight, but in between book clubs, I do stream me playing games, but usually during the gameplay, it's us talking about airplanes and Lord of the Rings. We're really not talking about the video game very often. Not very often. So, what kind of games? Just whatever I feel like playing. Usually like Oblivion or World of Warcraft. But it's mostly about conversation. Much less about the actual thing. Have you played BG3? I have, yeah. You're playing WoW right now? Yeah, I'll probably be on playing some WoW later tonight. So if I am, just let me know. Anyways, I'm going to send you all over to Cheebs, Chibble Baggins. And I'll probably be on later tonight, but I got to go run a few errands and pick my kids up from school. So yo, Nico, thanks for the bits. You just got here, Hot Local Grandpa? Yeah, I'll probably be on later tonight. So take it easy, everybody. Yeah, I had a good time. It was good times. So if you see me on tonight, come pop in, say what's up. Could happen, could not happen. Who's to say?
But we'll see you later. And join the Discord. Yeah, join the Discord if you want. Okay, bye.